Volume 16, Chapter 767, The Entity That Eludes Everyone. In a vast plain filled with neon light, a static voice suddenly rang, breaking the serenity of this mystical place. The 1198th rank Zodiac Enforcer of the Lesser Galaxy of Taurus has been eliminated. The moment this static voice spoke, the neon light suddenly churned and took the shape of an eye. Elaborate. An emotionless, indistinctive voice reverberated through the neon plane. I sense someone breaking the absolute rules in Lesser Galaxy of Taurus and dispatched the 1198th rank Zodiac Enforcer to investigate. I have recorded everything that the 1198th rank Zodiac Enforcer saw after descending to the scene. Please see for yourselves. As the static voice trailed off, a massive projection suddenly appeared, showing the first-person view through the 1198th rank Zodiac Enforcer's eyes, which started to play. Atlas Golden Constant in a Lesser Demon Body. The emotionless voice sounded the moment it saw Golden Constant minus 51,117 without even needing for him to reveal himself. Oh, the avatar of one of the lesser Minotaur gods serving the Darkness Demiurge's pantheon. Now, this is intruding. What was he doing in the Lesser Galaxy of Taurus? From what it looks, he seemed to get himself captured and become the catalyst that helped Constant forcibly use the power above the rules. Let me see. The voice sounded amused as the projection suddenly stopped before the neon lights started to shift and pulse. Oh ho ho ho, so that's what happened. How bold of you, Darkness Demiurge, to raise a soul farm using the Darkness Dreamscape in not only the Lesser Galaxy of Taurus but all of them, and even let the Lesser God descend using a distraction and then oversee it. Greedy and bold fellow through and through, but it is still not enough to kill a Valkyrian, even if that Lesser God was there with its true body. Unless Darkness Demiurge personally descends and wants to give us a reason to retaliate. That fellow is not that stupid to take this risk for a pawn. Let us continue to watch. The voice didn't contain any anger at all. On the contrary, it was filled with amusement and interest as the projection started moving again until it paused again when Furkaz suddenly descended. King of Hell Knights Furkaz also descended. What could have compelled him to take this risk for a golden constant? What did he offer? As if hearing the voice command, the projection started playing back and playing again when golden constant minus 51,117 was pinned on the ground. But this time, his inner thoughts sounded from the projection as if he were speaking out loud. I sacrifice my Timeless City Lord status, silver timeless sand and bronze timeless sand to timeless God. Please make your followers escape this plight. It's not enough, the voice muttered, and just as it had predicted, Furkaz's voice rang in reply in the same way, not enough. The next words of Golden Constant minus 51,117 sounded, I'm willing to share all my memories of this life. There are clues about a and percent number and or and dollar percent in them. No and percent and number at and percent me. The projection instantly paused again, words that elude us. The voice contained a rare hint of seriousness. It again played the projection back and started playing it again, and this time the result wasn't much different. What's going on? Who interfered? The voice expressed disbelief as it played the projection again. It went exactly the same until Furkaz brought out more of his true soul, but the voice's owner sensed something strange as it asked. He seemed to be talking with someone else. But there is no one other than the Lesser God, Enforcer, and himself. Is this projection complete? Yes, it is complete. I've also noticed this strangeness, and even when I was watching live, it was still the same. Please continue to watch and you'll understand. The voice didn't say anything and watched as Furkaz said, but his words turned into percent number percent, and then the Zodiac Enforcer cast its powerful spell. However, before the result could be played, the projection turned completely dark and then there was nothing. What is going on? The voice was extremely serious this time as it played the projection again and again, but no matter what, the result was always the same. Who could elude and interfere with the true omniscient vision? No one was there to answer the voice, and it knew no one existed who could either. So the Valkyrian died during this time, right? It asked. Yes. And the angelic race of Absolute Galaxy of Taurus is demanding an explanation, the static voice replied emotionlessly. Since they want an explanation, send the constellation Arbiter Taurus to investigate this. Also, have Constellation Arbiter Taurus detain the Lesser Minotaur God at my behest. He's an important clue about this strange event. Oh, and if Darkness Demiurge opposes, then you can have the angelic races start a war with the Darkness Pantheon. Lastly, after he took care of these matters, have the Constellation Arbiter Taurus personally lead change to the Atlas Dens. The mission is to detain Furkaz at all costs, even if we have to exhaust our forces from that place, and pin the blame on Furkaz for the Valkyrian's death. Furkaz's memories regarding this matter, I want them all. I have received your order. The static voice sounded affirmative before it spoke again. Another thing I would like your input on. Go on, the voice sounded. One of the 9 higher gods, Whiteness under the fantastic insect demiurge, had crossed the void and entered the middle galaxy of Leo. Although he hadn't broken any rules or interfered with anything, his existence could cause unimaginable damage if he acted. What? The voice sounded surprised. Fantastic insect demiurge knows better than anyone to break the rule. Her entire existence is based on rules, and she knows breaking them would only harm her. This matter is not simple. Have Constellation Arbiter Leo investigate the higher god personally, and don't take action without evidence. Fantastic insect demiurge shouldn't be provoked without good reason. Her existence is of utmost importance to keep the fantastic insects in check. I understand. The static voice answered in affirmative before it vanished from the neon plane. The neon eye suddenly churned and took the shape of the humanoid figure as it muttered, "What could elude even your powers, old friend?" This time an ethereal voice suddenly rang in reply, "What are you playing, stupid or what? Didn't you know the answer yourself? From the moment you watched that projection, you already know the answer to that question. Why play dumb?" The figure muttered, "So, one of the remaining universal godly scripture or universal godly artifacts have been surfaced, huh? It's not like I'm playing dumb, but you and I both know none of the aforementioned entities can interfere with our power like that. We are all bound by rules. Unless a scripture that is untied with its corresponding artifact is breaking them." The second voice replied with certainty, "But again, it's impossible since it means bringing the universal retribution and awakening it before being forever sealed. No scripture would dare do such a thing. It's simply not in our nature to break the rule of the universe even if it means perishing." Chapter 768, Buried Memories. No one would believe that a battle in a small corner of lesser galaxies had rattled up an unstoppable storm in a terrifying place away. But the natives of the lesser galaxies, or those in power, were focusing on another matter, which was infinitely more important than some incomprehensible higher power struggle. The most anticipated path of legend suddenly opened in every lesser galaxy, alarming those with the legendary keys. When the path activates, the legendary key begins to pulsate with a vibrant glow. Simultaneously, in the sky above mysterious different locations within each lesser galaxy, swirling vortexes of stardust appear. This vortex forms the doors of legend. The door of legend wasn't physical. It exists within a dimension, accessible only when the path of legend opens in all 12 lesser galaxies. This synchronicity creates a tear in the fabric of reality, revealing the doorway for a limited time. With this, the race to enter the path of legend instantly started the moment the signs appeared. Those with the keys can easily pinpoint the specific location of the door of legend in each lesser galaxy where it manifests, and some keep it a closely guarded secret. There were always cryptic clues scattered across the galaxies, like the star-ocean medallion, celestial alignments, and prophecies. But only those dedicated to unraveling the mysteries can hope to find the door of legend this way. Nonetheless, whether they were people in the limelight or those who lived in the shadows, they all started to make preparations because Path of Legend was not some flowery garden. Instead, it was a bloody battlefield. Furthermore, it wasn't just the lesser galaxies who were getting riled up. The powers in the middle galaxies, who always eyed the special vestiges of the Path of Legends, also quickly got the news about the opening of the Path of Legend from their loyal subordinates in the lesser galaxies. After all, a single Path of Legend opening means the same thing for the others as well since they are all entwined together. So, those with deep connections can easily find out whether they are a galaxy apart or living in the same galaxy. So they were making their own preparations to send their most talented members to the Path of Legend and snatch the legendary galaxy vestiges once someone entered the path. Among them was a god, a being of immense power whose plans intertwined with the fate of the Path of Legend. Its intentions remained shrouded in mystery, but one thing was certain. The stage was set for a peculiar showdown, and this time the Path of Legend was destined to be extraordinary. Bang! A powerful knuckle suddenly landed on a young man's face. He seemed to be in his late 20s, wearing a training outfit. The punch knocked him down, and he started coughing wildly with blood trickling down his nostril. However, despite the young man's coughing fit, his expression was one of a daze and uncertainty, as if he was in the wrong place. "Papa, you went too hard on poor JS. Look, he's even bleeding." A melodious voice reprimanded the punch's owner, who was clearly her own father. Her voice was filled with concern and worry about the young man, which startled him awake from his daze. The young man suddenly looked to the side. His eyes widened before they became slightly misty as he saw a tall, graceful figure with youthful vigor wearing a tight blue training outfit. Her short golden hair greatly complemented her charming, fairy-like oval face. In contrast, her bright, starry blue eyes were fearless yet filled with worry about him as she quickly made her way towards him with a towel. She glared at the old man with a tone built despite being in his mid-50s with a stern face. However, the young man didn't seem to notice the burly man or his surroundings. Only the young woman existed in his eyes, and he called with longing and a hint of fear as if she had vanished, Hope. But his strange way of calling her made Hope stunned, and she looked at him with disbelief. Even the old man raised his sword-like eyebrow as surprise flashed past his eyes. The reason for his strange expressions was simple. They had never seen this young man, who was obviously Jacob, show this kind of expression. He was always stern and impassive, as if he were on a mission and driven only by his goals. Even Hope was never able to break the ice despite giving obvious clues to the young Jacob. He actively avoided her and never bothered to respond to her in any way that made it look like he was interested in her. Maybe that was the reason she was drawn to him and wanted to uncover the mysteries hidden deep in her heart, for she was as stubborn as her father, not to mention fierce. It was to the point that despite the old man's displeasure, he didn't voice it out and was secretly glad that his tomboy of a daughter finally found something she was interested in. The other party was also his student and a capable man, but he was too stoic. However, the old man never interfered, nor was he planning to, and let nature take its course. He knew the chances between his daughter and his student were slim unless she took the lead, which he knew she would once she lost her patience. Today was another day at training, and his daughter was here again, watching them train like always after she finished her work as quickly as possible. Breaking the awkward atmosphere, the old man suddenly said in a stern voice, "You got distracted just now. Are you feeling well? I know you lost that priest who was akin to your father recently, so if you need time to settle down, take a break." A rare hint of concern flashed past the old man's eyes as he kindly advised, "Training is not a way to escape your grief, and you have to learn everything there is to learn about deceptive sword style and make it your own. Besides, I'm too old to keep up with you anymore, so you should consider my proposal again and train with Hope. She can easily match you, and it'll be a good chance in pace." Jacob's eyes widened slightly as he heard that familiar voice and turned his head around the tall old man, who gave off the aura of an unmovable mountain despite his advanced age and could still mope the floor with him if he wanted to, despite his humble words just now. He also knows that the old man was secretly trying to match him with Hope, as he always had. Mr. V, how could he forget about this old man, who was like the second person he considered closer to a father figure and most of all his mentor? Furthermore, when no one was there and everyone was vying for tech, he was the first investor to support him in realizing his dream, his journey to the top of the world as the most dangerous and richest man. This is the very reason he was dubbed as the Weapon Emperor. Far more importantly, in the strangest way, he also came to become his father-in-law. Chapter 769, Be Immortal for Both of Us. Jacob looked at Mr. V and then young Hope with disbelief before a frown appeared on his face, because his memories about the Zodiac Plains were completely intact. In fact, he clearly remembered suddenly being hit by something ghastly that made his entire soul tremble before he fell into darkness. Furthermore, it wasn't like he had experienced something like this before, it had happened previously. Still, it seemed too real to be just a lucid dream or illusion, yet at the same time he felt that he didn't belong in this place anymore. At this moment, Mr. V frowned with dissatisfaction as he replied, "You're calling me Mr. V again. I thought we were past that long ago. Call me teacher or Victoras unless you still consider me a stranger." Jacob's mind reeled as he heard that familiar stern tone, containing a tingle of care for him. How long had it been since I heard Mr. V's voice? I almost forgot about how he sounds. His eyes were filled with reminiscence and rare sadness. "HMPH, you had punched me so hard. If it was me, I would have also not acknowledged you." Hope was already snapped out of her daze at this moment as she playfully snickered and made her way towards Jacob. Jacob trembled slightly as he heard her mischievous voice filled with concern, just as he remembered. When she got closer, he felt the same warm presence, which was like warm sunlight for someone who lived in eerie darkness. Mr. V or Victoras snorted at this daughter's jab, but he was still looking at Jacob with a faint frown, as he could feel Jacob was reacting differently than usual. "Are you all right, JS?" Hope crouched down to Jacob as she moved her hand with a towel to clean Jacob's blood, with a hint of anticipation in her eyes for some reason. However, what happened next shocked both Victoras and Hope again as her hand paused, because unlike usual, Jacob didn't shun away or take the towel from Hope's hand and let her touch him and clean his blood as he looked at her with tender eyes completely opposite to his impassive glare. Jacob then suddenly moved his hand as he gently grabbed Hope's hand and began to get up from the ground. Hope followed suit, while Jacob never broke his eye contact with those mesmerizing blue eyes, and the normally fierce and playful Hope suddenly blushed. "Hope, I've never given you what you truly deserve. You were too good for someone like me. Your love and care were wasted on me, who always ran after his ambitions and dreams. Yet you still put up with everything, no matter the circumstances. "W, what are you doing?" she asked, trying to calm her wildly beating heart as Jacob was still holding her hand. Jacob suddenly broke into a rare smile as he gently said, "I don't know if it's real or not. I don't care because I know it's not. In fact, I should thank you for making me live at this moment again and giving me a chance to meet her again, even if it's not real. Hope, I've never given you what you truly deserve. You were too good for someone like me. Your love and care were wasted on me, who always ran after his ambitions and dreams. Yet you still put up with everything, no matter the circumstances. I guess even I refuse to believe that life could give something so precious, yet I remain blind. Instead of living in the present, I blame the past and work for the future. By the time I realized what I'd been given and had taken it for granted all my life, it was too late. How I had wished to trade everything for a little more time with you. Even at the end, I wasn't there with you. I was a fool who was searching for something that never existed while what I should have done to remain by your side. I even tried to live on and keep your memories alive in any way possible, even if it means living like a corpse just to make your wish to never be forgotten true. Yet, I failed again and lost to death." Jacob's voice was filled with emotions as tears were flowing out of Hope's eyes. She didn't know why she was crying because of this nonsense, which wasn't making any sense. Even the usually stern Victoras was flabbergasted by Jacob's loony talk, yet for some reason he felt sadness and heartache. But Jacob wasn't done, as he let all those thoughts flow out deep within his heart. "But I was given another chance at life and even an opportunity to finally complete my promise to you. I made myself believe that I was doing it for myself, but in the end it was always for you, and our promise gave me the strength to continue on. Although I don't know if I'll succeed in the end, as long as I have a chance, even if I end up becoming the devil, I won't stop until I complete my promise to you. I'll live on for you and your memories, and you'll never be forgotten." An undying conviction shone in his eyes as he looked at the crying face of his lover, whom he had nothing but love and gratitude for. His thirst for living forever rekindled and burned more fiercely than ever. "This is my promise to you and myself. I'll be an immortal for both of us." Jacob's words carried unshakable power and determination. As his eyes suddenly started to change, a flicker of white golden flames suddenly appeared as if he had achieved something, and whatever was restating him started to lose its effect. In Jacob's eyes, Hope's figure started to blur. Still, the smile never left his lips as he turned around and looked toward Victora's, who was also blurry at this moment, and said, "I was too proud and maybe even shy to say this to you, and you were gone before I could muster up my courage to say this. Let me say it this time. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Without your support there would be no Weapon Emperor, and I wouldn't have met with the hope of my life. You are and forever shall be my teacher, friend, and father-in-law. Nothing can change that, and I'll make sure of that." Just as his words left his mouth, the entire reality seemed to be shattered like glass, but it didn't seem over as Jacob found himself in another reality with a letter in his hand. He was old at this moment. As he looked at the letter, he trembled as it was filled with lovely handwriting. This moment held a very special place in his heart, for this was the very moment his search for immortality started, the same moment when he decided to live on instead of accompanying his recently dead wife. This letter was her final words to him, filled with love, longing, and acceptance for her fate. "It's the poem she wrote before her death while I was squandering my time searching for a non-existent cure." Jacob was full of lamentation and loneliness. As he read those words again, it was as if hope was reading it to him. "For J.S., the love of life, as shadows creep and life begins to fade, my spirit wanes, a fragile masquerade. Yet fear not, my love, for in your heart I'll stay, a flicker of hope, your guiding ray. I'll dwell in whispers of the wind's soft sigh, in sunlight dancing, a mote caught in the sky. Feel me in the warmth of a summer's kiss, and in the tranquility of winter's bliss. Though flesh may wither and my spirit flees, love's ember burns eternally for thee. In your every heartbeat a part of me resides, a silent echo of where passion abides. So grieve not, dear, for I am not alone, my essence lingers, a whispered tone. Within your soul our love will find its art, and thus my love will never be apart. Together forever our spirits entwined in memory's cherished peace of mind. So live on bravely, with courage and with grace, and let my love fills your life's empty space. For in your heart a part of me will be immortal, love, just you and me. So be immortal for both of us, for wherever you are there I shall be. Your Hope." Chapter 770, Awakening and Confrontation. Within a vast, ethereal expanse filled with floating islands and celestial bodies, the sky was a kaleidoscope of colors, shifting and changing constantly. The land beneath was filled with towering ancient trees pulsing with neon spectrum and giving off a mysterious aura. Furthermore, within this ancient forest, strange, otherworldly creatures roam, and some even have their own territories filled with hidden dangers and opportunities. At this moment, in the middle of a hill, a gigantic gray skeleton 50 meters in length was lying there. But it didn't appear to be rotting or an ancient corpse, for its gray bones seemed to be carved with moonstone without any kind of dust or profanity on them. Furthermore, for some reason, those otherworldly creatures didn't dare approach this skeleton and actively avoided it as if terrified of its presence. Suddenly, on the gray skeleton, crimson runic markings started to surface, and soon the entire skeleton was covered in them and they were glowing in a rhythmic crimson pulse. But that wasn't all. The next moment, within the hollow eye sockets of the skeleton, white sparks appeared, and the very next moment thereafter, ethereal white golden flames ignited in them as they burned fiercely. The skeleton suddenly moved the next moment as it started to rise from the ground, making it tremble slightly. "Where am I?" A confused spectral voice suddenly rang from the skeleton as the flames in its hollow eyes flickered before they turned intense as the skeleton, who was obviously Jacob, instantly remembered everything. Furthermore, when Jacob noticed his completely transformed body and the hidden power within him, he was even more shocked. "I completed the longevity schema. How? And how did I even escape that place and end up here?" The more Jacob thought, the more confused and frightened he became because this was too strange, as he knew he wasn't imagining things. He even thought he was in another illusion or that strange state, but he didn't feel he was in one like before. Somehow, he knew it was reality. Jacob quickly tried to test it since it was the only way to confirm it and get answers to his questions. This situation was simply too uncanny. He first looked towards his neck and found the infinity pendant was there and without hesitation, cursed immortality. Jacob tried to summon the cursed book and confirm if he wasn't hallucinating or trapped in an illusion. To his relief, cursed immortality appeared, and without waiting, he quickly opened the cover and looked toward the first page. What he saw shocked him while also confirming that he wasn't imagining things at all. Cursed immortality. Cursed immortal physique, 9 phases. Current phase, second phase, first phase, body transformation, complete stages of body transformation, 3 first stage, cursed heart emergence, complete second stage. Cursed blood condensing, complete third stage. Cursed bone marrow amalgamation, complete second phase. Cosmic crucible totem skeleton, stages of second phase. 1 first stage, cursed totem skeleton inheritor. Jacob Steve, current phase. Second phase, cosmic crucible totem skeleton, first stage progress. 0% lifespan, 900,350 years. All youthful Jacob was gobsmacked when he saw that the first phase had been completed, and even more shocking, his lifespan had reached over 900,000 years somehow. He clearly remembered that the last time he checked, his lifespan was around 40,000 years, and even if he somehow completed the first phase, he was supposed to get only 5,000 years after completing the longevity schema. Yet his lifespan had reached over 900,000 years, and the scariest part was he didn't even know how. But then he suddenly thought about something. Nyx. He remembered she went to the dark battle arena to devour the dreamscape realm and control it. That was the only explanation he could think of, but it still didn't make sense how he was able to complete the longevity schema. However, he didn't get a reply at all, and when he tried to enter the nightmare dreamscape realm, he couldn't. Is she evolving again? Morning sunshine. Jacob was startled when a familiar, impish, eerie voice suddenly rang in his head. Immortica? Ha 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 ha. What a priceless reaction. Immortica laughed, clearly enjoying Jacob's reaction. But Jacob wasn't in the mood to entertain the eccentric book. What the hell is going on? And here we go again. Immortica muttered before it finally decided to stop tormenting its inheritor. Didn't I tell you at the start that once you completed the first phase, I will be able to communicate with you again vocally? So congrats, you don't have to read anymore, ha 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 ha. I wasn't fucking asking if you can speak or not. Jacob retorted as he started to feel like he had just released the devil from its prison and even wanted to put it back. But alas, he knew it was impossible, and now he had to live with it. How did I complete the longevity schema? It was the biggest question he wanted an answer to no matter what, and he knew that if he didn't get it, he would never be at peace. Duh, you know there is only one way this could happen. So of course, it was me who helped you. Now show some gratitude to your savior, hehe. Immortica admitted it without hesitation as if it was talking about something trifled. But I wasn't impressed at all. It was a massive shock, and they quickly asked, "How? You never told me you could do something like that." Jacob was always under the impression that he was in control of the progress of cursed immortality. But now, after hearing that Immortica could interfere and control its progress as well, he started to feel uncomfortable, as if he was being controlled. Immortica could manipulate him if it wished. It changed his entire perspective of the cursed book, and he would never accept it. Jacob never thought that after awakening, he would instantly experience such an existential crisis that could directly affect his entire life and path to immortality. Chapter 771, Bloodline of Infinity. Wea, Immortica exclaimed, "Instead of thanking me, you are starting to doubt me. Tusk, it seems your paranoia is still as strong as ever." When Jacob heard this, he couldn't help but instantly think about what had happened that day, and he couldn't find any words to refute it. He had indeed fallen into a trap, and the enemy was simply too powerful for him to handle. This made Jacob calm down a little, as he knew Immortica had indeed saved him. Otherwise, he would have been a corpse or a prisoner right now, which could be worse than dying in many ways. Nonetheless, it still doesn't change the fact that Immortica could interfere with his progress, which made him extremely uncomfortable. Even if I'm not happy with it, what can I do? Cursed immortality is a universal godly scripture that can fiddle around with the entire universe system if it wants to. I can't fathom what it's capable of. He felt bitter as he wasn't arrogant enough to think he could completely control something like cursed immortality. Furthermore, compared to those two entities he met that day, cursed immortality was clearly more terrifying since it would save him from them. Although he didn't know how they managed to escape that day, feeling the power within, Jacob was sure that Immortica had done something terrifying and even helped him not only complete the longevity schema, but also charged up cursed blood somehow. He knew all those corpses weren't enough to completely charge the cursed blood. No, they were far from enough, yet Immortica had made it happen. After calming down, Jacob asked sternly, "I'm grateful and even flattered that you went out of your way to save me. But it still didn't change the fact that you can interfere if you want to, and I'm not comfortable with it. No one would. Furthermore, he has always told me that I won't do anything if I die." Then what changed it? Heh, no, anyone else would have been thanking me instead of feeling insecure, and they would have already started to cozy up to me. But that's what I liked about you. You know, you just don't want anything else to control you. You can't accept there is someone else above you, and that's a quality required to continue your path. Still, I do owe you an explanation. First, I indeed helped you by breaking the most sacred rule of a godly scripture, and it came with a price that you had paid. As for why I saved you, isn't it obvious? I don't want to lose the source of my entertainment, ha 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 ha. Jacob felt the urge to punch the eccentric book when he heard the last part, and for some reason he even accepted since he knew Immortica only wanted to be entertained, but he clearly wouldn't buy it. Price that I had paid, what do you mean by that and what kind of price? The flames in his eyes flicker intensely as he has very bad feelings about it. I can't go into details. Just know that a universal godly scripture is the embodiment of universe laws, which means it has the power to not only interfere but change them. However, for this exact reason, we have the most vicious restriction of all, which is that this power is useless to us. We can't use it, and without any worthy inheritor, we are nothing but ordinary antiques. On top of that, not just anyone can inherit a universal godly scripture, you know this better than anyone else. Even after the inheritor is found, making progress in a universal godly scripture is even more difficult, especially as you reach the completion. What I did was akin to going against the entire universe's laws and my own existence. And the worst punishment for me is to directly punish my inheritor. Although the punishment wasn't extreme since those two were also breaking the universal laws in many ways, it was still enough to have killed you even if I saved you. So don't think I would ever do that for you again unless you are ready to pay with your life. Jacob's expression was grave, as he could tell Immortica was unusually serious. As for whether it was telling the truth, he wasn't arrogant enough to think he could tell that. Still, Immortica's explanation made lots of sense, but it also made him dreadful of the universe's laws. But he was more confused, so what did I pay? I'm clearly still alive and I don't feel anything. In fact, my lifespan had been raised to a ridiculous degree. Just what the hell did you do? Ha 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 ha. Immortica suddenly laughed as if that conversation had never happened and answered, "Well, you see, I helped the little nightmare a little and made it directly devour the entire Dreamscape soul farm, which was spread throughout the 12 lesser galaxies. Although it wasn't available to the entire galaxies, it had still accumulated a lot of Dreamscape soul power. So when it was completely devoured, you got 70% of that share in soul vitality. At that time, since I had already helped you complete the first phase, and the genesis of the cursed immortal bloodline was complete. You need to know that the cursed immortal bloodline is extremely special since only I can create it. It has another name, Bloodline of Infinity. This means that your cursed blood is infinite, and even if you used it all, it'll regenerate infinitely. But since you don't have the entire cursed immortal physique yet, you can only regenerate the cursed blood by absorbing either others' blood or soul vitalities or by paying with your own lifespan. But don't worry, since this regenerative process depends on your will, as long as you don't want to use your lifespan to regenerate it, it won't be used, and you can still use the same way of absorbing blood as before to regenerate it. As for why you would use your own blood, it is simple because after completing the first phase, you have awakened my first inheritance ability, Infinity Blood Sacrifice. The Infinity Blood Sacrifice will allow you to sacrifice your blood for any type of wish. The more substantial the wish, the more infinity blood you have to pay for it to be realized. You can even consider cursed blood or infinity blood to be the highest currency of the universe, which the universe won't reject. So the price at that time was also your infinity blood, and what you had wasn't enough. So your lifespan started to get used to regenerate your infinity blood until the price was paid. And that's where the little nightmare came in handy. Jacob was so shocked that he didn't even react for a while, as this was simply too much for him to take in, since not only the truth behind cursed immortal bloodline was shocking, but this inheritance ability, infinity blood sacrifice, was simply reality bending. He can wish for anything as long as he can pay the price. The implications behind it were so huge that he thought he was in an illusion. Furthermore, he instantly understands where Nyx fits in all this. Immortal's scheming abilities are simply too terrifying for him not to be awed and dreadful by them. Suppressing his urge to test this infinity blood sacrifice, he quickly asked, "So what you're saying is that the lifespan I currently have is what remains of it after Nyx devours the entire dark battle arena?" Ha 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 ha, indeed. How much did I pay exactly? Jacob was curious about the price one needs to pay to have a universal godly scripture make a move. Well, not much, only around 143,899,100 years. Jacob thought he heard wrong, but he knew he didn't as he blurted, "How much?" Ha 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 ha. Immortal burst into joyous laughter like crazy as Jacob almost lost consciousness when he realized that he had lost almost 150 million of his lifespan. Chapter 772. Soul Stellar Formation. Jacob didn't know what to feel at this moment as the revelation of 150 million years completely caught him off guard. In comparison, almost 1 million years were really nothing. Still, after completing the first phase in that strange dream, his mentality seemed to have undergone a qualitative change. He could quickly control his emotions and calm down. Since it's the price I paid to live, then it's worth it even if I was left with few years to live. I can quickly recover all those lost years with Nyx again. But the change of acquiring so much may not come again, not to mention Immortal did something to quicken the process. If Nyx hadn't had Immortal's help, I'm afraid it would have taken too long, and now she seemed to be evolving. I should be content with what I have and thankful I'm still alive. The biggest benefit in all this is still the infinity blood sacrifice ability that could allow me to make any wish as long as I can pay with my blood. Only after completing the first phase did the true mystery of cursed immortality start to show. After weighing the pros and cons, Jacob, through the loss of millions of years of lifespan, put his head back on his head and felt relief. He also learned more about a universal godly scripture. So about this ability, I can make any wish. Like if I wish to be immortal and can the price, I can be immortal right now. Jacob questioned as he wanted to know more about this ability and the limitations of it. Hehe, greedy, aren't we? Immortal laughed, but the answer to your question is yes. However, I don't think you would be able to pay the price for it unless you sacrifice the whole universe, and last time I checked you didn't owe a universe. So you should focus on comprehending the immortal chapter. Remember, you haven't even scratched the surface of cursed blood yet. Only with immortal chapter can you fully unravel its full mysteries and control it. Jacob was slightly shocked, but it wasn't out of his expectations. He finally understood just how powerful the infinity blood sacrifice was, and what he needed to do to control it. But then Immortal suddenly asked something that made him tremble. "But I wondered if your first question after you learn about the infinity blood sacrifice would be whether you can become immortal with it, while I was expecting you would ask if you could revive certain someone or not." Hope's face instantly flashed in his mind, and he even wanted to do it. It wasn't like he never thought about it first, but "It's none of your damn business," Jacob coldly replied, clearly not wanting to discuss this with Immortal since this matter was only his. Hee, all right, don't need to be agitated. It's more interesting in this way anyway. Immortal backed down with clear amusement in its voice. It took Jacob a little while to suppress all those thoughts, but when he finally got to business, he looked towards his gigantic body. He noticed that his water and fire cores were missing, but he could somehow feel them within his head. Not only that, but his cursed heart also seemed to be in his skull with a hex core. What is going on with cursed heart? Why is it in my head with other magic cores, and there seemed to be something else? You finally noticed. You see, now that you have completed the first phase and discarded your previous mortal shell, your entire anatomy has been changed. The biggest change is your soul is now fully revealed and becomes tangible. It's in its first initial stage of cosmic soul evaluation, called the spiritual nebula. You should know that a nebula is a vast cloud of gas and dust. It is often considered the birthplace of stars. But in truth, it also hides the truth of the universe's birth. However, the journey from a nebula to a fully fledged universe involves a series of complex and awe-inspiring transformations. Spiritual nebula is just the start of this journey and the first step of soul cosmic evolution. This first evaluation step is called the soul stellar formation and has 3 stages. The first and initial stage is called the soul gravitational collapse. In this stage, one needs to first take control of one's soul in a spiritual nebula by mastering one's innate elemental law. After reaching a certain proficiency in elemental law, using it, they need to control the spiritual nebula, which is in a gas and dust-like state. Thereby have the soul gas and soul dust collapse under their own gravity by introducing the elemental law in their spiritual nebula until there is no soul gas and soul dust, and it transforms into soul ether. It's like purifying the soul. The second and intermediate stage is called the soul protostar formation. In this stage, one needs to ignite their soul ether with higher proficiency of elemental law and their own soul vitality, then mold it to form a soul protostar, a dense core of elemental soul ether. It is a very dangerous process, by the way, because if one doesn't have enough elemental law control or soul vitality, they will die by either completely blowing their own soul or using up their entire vitality. The third and advanced stage is called the soul star birth. In this stage, the nuclear fusion ignites within the elemental soul protostar, marking the birth of a new and unique soul star. This process is complex, and it all depends on the practitioner's elemental law, proficiency, willpower, and luck. This marks the completion of soul stellar formation. Jacob was astounded when he heard this strange yet mystical evolution of the soul, as it was the first time he had heard it. Can a soul really birth a universe? And I have to undergo this process on top of cultivating the second phase? Jacob quickly inquired, as this would add more complexity to his journey. He had already had his hands full with cursed immortality. Heh, you see, here you are different from others. The process of soul stellar formation I just explained isn't unique to you. In fact, these steps also have another name, and you are well aware of them. This is the path of legendary rank. The spiritual nebula is fable legendary state, gravitational collapse is legendary noble state, the soul protostar formation is legendary lord state, and last but not least, the soul star birth is legendary king state. Jacob's expression changed as he quickly questioned, wait, does that mean I'm already a fable legendary rank? Immortality playfully asked, what do you think? After all, only legendary rank giants would have 50 meters of height. Chapter 773. Second phase. After Jacob had absorbed the massive disclosure, Immortality continued, the difference between you and the others is that you don't need to waste effort on your soul because no matter what, it is still part of your body. Or do you think there is another scripture that would allow you to just focus on your body transformation and you somehow manage to form a spiritual nebula? The answer is there is none. For others, when they form their spirit bodies and aura bodies in the Inception Legend body step, they need to awaken their soul in the Quasi-Legend step. The true meaning behind it is to sense the existence of your soul and then use the aura glyph or spirit glyph, which at that time should have spread through the entire body, and then assimilate the soul into them. Once this step is complete, the final step is to merge the magic orbits body and soul to reach the fable legendary state. But to complete this final step, one needs a catalyst to start the process, and you know about it, it is a star vestige, otherwise known as legendary vestige. A star vestige is formed in the core of an elemental planet, a very rare type of planet filled with elemental law powers. And it's very hard to locate because it appears just like a normal planet until the planet visage is fully formed, and it could only appear in middle galaxies or higher. A star vestige is very special because it contains the purest elemental laws, and by assimilating it with a magic core, one can sense the elemental laws for a period of time and comprehend their own elemental law. The older the star vestige, the purer the elemental laws are in it, and the longer the comprehension time. That's why it is required for a quasi-legend to use it to form their spiritual nebula, because it is almost impossible to comprehend Zodiac Plains laws without a star vestige. Most importantly, a star vestige also becomes a shell for spiritual nebula to form because physical bodies can't contain it, and magic cores also exist within this shell at completion, and we called this shell a soul totem. The reason a legendary rank is so powerful and difficult to kill is because they can possess other bodies as long as their soul totem remains or they manage to escape. Although their power would wane, they can easily cultivate to their peak again as long as their soul totem has their souls. Although there is more to, you need to explore yourself, but this is the general truth behind a legendary rank. Jacob was again astounded and finally understood the importance of a legendary vestige, how it fits in all of this, and why this rank was called legendary. This soul totem is simply a cheat, a method to cheat death. The bodies are just shells for legendary beings at this point. It seemed I needed to be extremely careful while dealing with a legendary being. But wait. Jacob's flaming eyes sparkled fiercely as he quickly questioned, I can understand that I managed to form my spiritual nebula because of you, but you just said that bodies can't contain spiritual nebula without a soul totem. So does this mean my body is my soul totem? Didn't this mean I can't do the same time and escape death? Ha 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 ha. Immortality suddenly burst into wanton laughter after hearing this question, and Jacob suddenly had a very bad feeling about it. Immortality said, I'll leave this discussion until you look at the second phase first. Jacob was startled. It had completely escaped his mind since he was busy confronting Immortica. He quickly looked at the second phase. Second phase of Cosmic Crucible Totem Skeleton, Cursed Totem Skeleton. Cursed Totem Skeleton, 0% description. Gather 12 legendary cosmic vestiges and integrate them in the Longevity Schema 12 cosmic core points in your skeleton in universal cosmic sequences. The universal cosmic sequence can't be changed, and progress will only be made by integrating with the correct sequence. Universal Cosmic Sequence, 0/12-1st. Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Aries Point, located at the cubital joint right, grants Fire Elemental Affinity. -2nd, Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Taurus Point, located at the knee joint left, grants Earth Elemental Affinity. -3rd, Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Gemini Point, located at the cervical spine, grants Wind Elemental Affinity. -4th. Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Cancer Point, located at the sternum, grants Water Elemental Affinity. -5th, Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Leo Point, located at the sternum-inubrial junction, grants Light Elemental Affinity. -6th, Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Virgo Point, located at the occipital bone, grants Dark Elemental Affinity. -7th. Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Libra Point, located at the mandible, grants Void Elemental Affinity. -8th, Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Scorpio Point, located at the thoracic spine, grants Life Elemental Affinity. -9th, Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Sagittarius Point, located at the lumbar spine pine, grants Death Elemental Affinity. -10th. Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Capricorn Point, located at the sacrum, grants Lightning/Thunder Elemental Affinity. -11th, Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Aquarius Point, located at cranial apex, grants Space Elemental Affinity. -12th, Longevity Schema Cosmic Core Pisces Point, located at the frontal eminence, grants Time Elemental Affinity. Completion of this stage will result in 1,000,000 years of lifespan and Cursed Immortal Totem. Jacob's expression changed when he read the second phase, and he finally understood why Immortica was giving him all that information about soul totems and legendary rank. It wasn't like he didn't have a totem. It was just that his entire skeleton was going to be his totem, and knowing Cursed Immortality, it was anything but ordinary. Calming his emotions, he asked, "How is this Cursed Immortal Totem different from others, and are these 12 legendary cosmic vestiges the same vestiges that I'm thinking they are?" Heh, let's leave the former answer when the right time comes. As for your latter question, you guessed correctly. The 12 legendary cosmic vestiges are the same 12 vestiges hidden in the Path of Legend. Because how could a mere star vestige be worthy of me, cured immortality? The star vestiges are the lowest kind of vestiges, and above them are galaxy vestiges born in the core of an elemental galaxy. But the rarest of them all are the cosmic vestiges born from 12 lesser absolute galaxies. Only cosmic vestiges born from absolute galaxies are enough to give you all those affinities, because they are a must-have if you want to be immortal. Jacob completely ignored Immortica's proud tone. He knew things had taken a worse turn, which meant he needed to fight the entire 12 galaxies and probably the middle galaxies as well to grab those 12 vestiges if he wanted to complete this second phase. What if someone else claimed it? Jacob asked, which was probably the entire reason he was feeling apprehensive at that moment. Oh, if that's what you're worried about, then you don't need to. Even if someone else used it, as long as you can kill that person before they reach the legendary king state, you can retrieve the cosmic vestige. But if you are too late, then you need to start again from scratch because the 12 cosmic vestiges are a set that has a unique universal cosmic sequence. If a new set appeared, it means a new universal cosmic sequence, and the old one will lose its meaning. Thus, you need to gather the new set from scratch again, and it will continue until you complete the universal cosmic sequence. But why worry so much? After all, you just happen to be currently inside the Path of Legend. Chapter 774, All the Benefits. Jacob's discussion with Immortica lasted quite a long as there were simply too many things to cover and too many shocks for him to take, especially the truth that he was already within the Path of Legend. As for how he ended up here or how it happened, he already knew it was Immortica's doing, and the Cursed Book's true abilities again shocked him. The biggest change was naturally in Cursed Immortality itself. After completing the first phase, not only can Immortica now speak with him, but the previous summoning time limit was removed, which means he can now summon Cursed Immortality anytime he wants, and there were no limitations on it. The second change was also related to Cursed Immortality. The Infinity Pendant's inner space had been increased from 1,000 cubic meters to 10,000 cubic meters, which was nothing but good news for Jacob. Furthermore, after the first phase, the Infinity Pendant also unlocked a new feature, the Infinite Time Module. The infinite time module can increase or decrease the speed of time for Jacob alone or within the designated area by Jacob. As for the time limit or area radius, there is no limit. But the crux of the matter was that to use the infinite time module, Jacob needed to fuel it with his own cursed blood. According to Immortality, he can increase or decrease time by millions for himself or for the entire universe as long as he has the cursed blood to fuel it. Jacob was dumbfounded, as he never thought the infinity pendant was this powerful. Furthermore, since the infinity pendant was still missing a component, the amount of cursed blood needed to fuel the infinite time module was 10 times higher than its original, which made Jacob grimace. Nonetheless, this function was still extremely useful, depending on how he utilized it. He had already experienced the pros of the time acceleration in the nightmare dreamscape realm. But it was still not reality, yet now he could do the same thing in reality and more effectively. However, he knew he couldn't utilize this at will since it cost cursed blood, and if he wasn't careful, his lifespan would start to decrease. All of a sudden, cursed blood became extremely precious for Jacob, and his lifespan became a currency. He had never expected there would come a day when he would treat his lifespan like a currency. Furthermore, he started to understand why cursed immortality was the exclusive scripture that grants immortality. Without it, no one could utilize cursed immortality's true abilities. Not to mention, there were still 8 entire phases left until he could grasp the entire scripture and its power. Nonetheless, Jacob knew he needed lifespan to utilize his abilities of cursed immortality, and Nyx became as important as his life for him. Without her, he knew he would never be able to use those abilities to their full potential. Once the shock of the cursed immortality settled down, Immortality revealed the next most important thing, which almost made Jacob laugh with mirth, just like Immortality. It was the evolution of the mysterious and terrifying fighting giant spirit. Since the fighting giant spirit was an aspect directly connected to his soul, after his soul achieved the spiritual nebula evolution stage, his fighting giant spirit also followed suit and evolved. Although the fighting giant spirit's properties and benefits remained the same and only strengthened, like the aspect of Eyes of Judge, it also awoke an innate passive ability called combat gigantification. Combat gigantification will allow him to manipulate his size by using the soul force once each time he uses this ability. By utilizing this ability, he can become as small as 1 meter and as large as 50 meters, which is his actual height, and this limit will continue to grow with his power. The only disadvantage to combat gigantification was that the shorter his form, the more limited his power of fighting giant spirit. But Jacob didn't care since he was always annoyed by his height, which was simply too eye-catching in many ways. After all, he wasn't always in combat, and now that he was 50 meters tall, Jacob knew he would stick out like a sore thumb, which he really wanted to avoid. The gluttony mask was his only option. However, gluttony mask also had its limitations. It didn't allow him to use his true powers as long as he was in disguise. This was a price to pay for a perfect disguise. But now, with combat gigantification, he didn't need to always be in disguise, and fighting giant spirit wasn't his main source of power at all. After all, Jacob knew he could crush quasi-legends like ants because of how powerful he had become. Other than the fighting giant spirit, his Eyes of Judge were also strengthened, and according to Immortality, they were now on the verge of breaking through into the intermediate awakening stage. As for when it was going to happen, he didn't give any clues except that they were directly related to his soul, and it was enough to make Jacob form his own guess. His other abilities also existed, but most of them had become useless, especially all those aspects he acquired in his early days. The only useful abilities he was left with were the mortal danger sense from the infant mortal giant and the fluid acceleration from bloodstorming bug, which he had with him since the very beginning. After sorting out everything and getting all the information from Immortality that he could for the time being, Jacob closed the cursed book. He sighed deeply while looking at the ethereal scenery around him. Suddenly, his flaming eyes compressed into 2 flaming dots as he was focusing on something deep within, searching for a certain feeling. Soon, something magical happened. A vague mystical symbol suddenly appeared on Jacob's forehead, and the next moment, Jacob's gigantic body started to shirk in size until he was only 2 meters tall, and the symbol on his forehead vanished. Now he was standing in a crater of his own footprint. Seeing that the combat gigantification worked after he followed his instincts just as Immortality told him, Jacob was elated. He finally felt like he was no longer an attention-drawing clown. Yet Jacob also felt a part of his power diminished after decreasing his size so much, but he was still left with about 80% of his strength, which was still too much for any quasi-legend. The next moment, clothes appeared on his skeleton body. Although they were old from the time when he wasn't a giant, he still kept them. Not to mention, anything below legendary rank was nothing but ordinary treasure for him, so he wasn't too bothered about them. Besides, he can always modify his unique rank clothes, so it was a big deal at all. Looking around the hill, Jacob decided to create a small cave for himself because he still needed to do something before he started his journey in the path of legend. Chapter 775. Realizations. Jacob sat cross-legged in the newly opened cave. His flaming eyes were completely gone, leaving behind two hollow sockets. He was in this position for hours as he was trying to focus on his cursed heart, which had apparently merged with his spiritual nebula and was currently hidden within his head. At this moment suddenly, Jacob could see a spherical nebula filled with ethereal neon mist surrounded by endless darkness. I succeed! Jacob was elated as he knew this nebula was none other than his own soul. After his last encounter with death, Jacob seemed to have gained some kind of control over his inner self, and he could feel that the soul force had also undergone some peculiar changes. That's why he didn't leave to explore the path of legend. He wanted to comprehend this more. Just as he thought, after focusing his soul force, he was able to track back to its origin, which was also his soul. Utilizing the eyes of Judge, he seemed to have connected his vision with his soul force as well. Now, he was able to see his spiritual nebula, but it wasn't enough for Jacob as he wanted to see the cursed heart and his magic core situation. So upon focusing on the spiritual nebula, Jacob's vision started to draw nearer and nearer, until he was within the neon nebula filled with countless particles. It was a very strange experience, as he could feel a sense of familiarity with those particles. Jacob didn't know how deep he had come or how long it had taken him, but when he seemed to have reached the very center of the nebula, he was able to see a breathtaking, spectacular scene. He saw the inky black cursed heart pulsing with crimson light, and within one of its lobes was the revolving hex core. But it wasn't all, as he found his fire core and water core revolving around the cursed heart-like planets around its star, and then he finally noticed that it wasn't just his two magic cores. Instead, the entire nebula seemed to be revolving around the cursed heart. Jacob found himself stuck watching this grand scene that was happening right within him. A sense of profoundness washed over him as if he were comprehending something. More time passed until he lost his sense of time when he suddenly snapped out of that strange state. Even what made Jacob uncertain was that he didn't know what he had just grasped. It was like he knew, but he forgot about it the moment he gained his sense. At this moment, what is that? Jacob was startled when he noticed that there was something attached to his water magic core. It was a block of ethereal purple ice that was half absorbed into his water magic core. It was as if it was integrating with his water magic core, which shocked him since it was too strange. There was nothing like this around his fire magic core. Furthermore, now that he was focusing on his water core, he could actually sense something strange happening to it. The next moment, Jacob's vision shifted as his empty eye sockets suddenly lit up. His vision returned to the empty cave, but his eyes were burning with disbelief and a hint of anticipation as he guessed something. Without waiting, Jacob raised his palm in front of him and then channeled water mana. The next moment, ethereal blue mana swirled on top of his palm, but unlike before, it had a hint of purple mixed in it, and he could feel a terrifying chill from it. Apparently, he had sensed this kind of chillness before. Yin ice. Jacob instantly realized that the block of purple ice integrating with his water core was none other than Yin ice, the main part of the damaged legendary treasure Yin Sky Island. He was supposed to get it, but was interfered with by Golden Constant and his goons. He had almost forgotten about it after he was barely able to keep his life, so he didn't care about some treasure he failed to grab. But now, it seemed that Immortality had not only saved his life and brought him to the path of legend ahead of time, but it had even helped him with Yin Ice. Jacob felt even more complicated when he realized this. He even wanted to summon the Cursed Book and questioned why the Yin Ice was so important and what its effects would be on his magic core once it was successfully assimilated. But he decided not to and waited until the integration process was complete. He just didn't want to give the Cursed Book the satisfaction of seeing his current state of mind. Nonetheless, despite his gratefulness, Jacob's vigilance was still the same, or he wouldn't be wasting his time conforming to the changes in his body. After calming down, Jacob probes another hidden space within his body, the solar plexus, where Autark is located. The last time he checked, Autark was still wounded. But when he investigated his solar plexus, Jacob was astounded because Autark was fully recovered. Even its broken body was completely regenerated. Jacob's mind raced as he communicated with Autark. "You recovered." "Sir," Autark's emotionless voice rang, "I've recovered some time ago and I'm glad that you are fine. I wasn't able to reach you previously. I was unconscious." Jacob stated, "For how long have you been unable to reach me?" Autark replied without hesitation, "I don't know the exact time, but it took me around 4 years to recover and I instantly tried to reach you. I think 5 more years have passed since then." I've been out for over 9 years. Jacob was in utter disbelief. For him, it seemed like only a few hours had passed, but it turned out he had been uncurious for 9 years. Although he was still fine, he still felt surreal that he was still alive despite lying in the middle of Path of Legend for 9 years. Chapter 776, Towards the Cosmic Vestige of Taurus, Part 1. At this moment, Jacob's figure in his long windbreaker flashed past the ancient trees, a circular disk shimmering in ethereal light. But it wasn't just a normal circular disk. It was made like a stylized celestial compass with zodiac symbols etched on it. One of the zodiac symbols of Taurus was glowing brightly as the curled needle on the compass pointed in a certain direction. This was the legendary key of Taurus that Jacob had found many years ago, and right now, it is finally showing its true function and usefulness. The moment Jacob learned that he had been in the Path of Legend for over 9 years, his first reaction was anxiety. He thought that Immortality had opened the Path of Legend using its prowess, which probably meant all the paths in other lesser galaxies had been opened as well. Although Immortality refused to say anything about the Path of Legend, except that this was a neutral ground and everyone was for themselves here, he assumed the worst from the get-go. If the Path of Legend was opened for 9 years for others as well, this means that others had a head start of 9 years, and they might have already claimed some legendary vestiges or all of them. However, when he took out the legendary key to see if he could get some clues, he was pleasantly surprised to find that the key instantly came to life the moment it appeared in the Path of Legend environment. The compass point that was pointing towards the sky before started to point in a direction, and the symbol of Taurus glows brightly. Jacob presumed that since the zodiac symbol was still glowing, this could only mean one thing. The legendary vestige of Tarsus remains unclaimed. Although this didn't give him any clues about other legendary vestiges, as long as this was still unclaimed, there was a hope that others were still in a similar potion. Immortality might have used its prowess to pull him into the Path of Legend ahead of time, knowing his situation, but the Path of Legend might still not be open to all galaxies. Nonetheless, Jacob quickly made his preparations before leaving to follow the legendary key direction, knowing that the truth would surface when he found someone else. Furthermore, if the other legendary vestiges were still unfound, he needed to gather the other legendary keys for those vestiges since this was the easiest way to find them, and those keys would be in the hands of powerful figures. However, for current Jacob, as long as he doesn't encounter a veteran Fable legendary rank, he is confident in overpowering everyone in the Path of Legend. Furthermore, he knew he was still a rookie legendary rank who didn't even know what he could do with all this power, especially soul force. He could tell there was far more to it than just telekinesis and spiritual pressure, especially after encountering those terrifying existences that day. As Jacob ventured into the ancient forest, he passed many beasts and he could sense their prowess. They were at least in the early stage of quasi-legend rank. But they were no threat to him, and he was also not interested in them at this moment since he wanted to find the cosmic vestige of Taurus as quickly as possible. Although he knew the cosmic vestige of Taurus came second in the universal cosmic sequence, and that he wouldn't be able to use it without acquiring the cosmic vestige of Ares, he still wanted to acquire it first before vying for the others since he had the legendary key for it. Moreover, he would also get more information on how the legendary key works and why it is relevant to acquire the other cosmic vestiges. After all, if a legendary key was a must-have to acquire the other cosmic vestige, then Jacob would have to find people with the corresponding keys first. But if the legendary key turned out to be irrelevant, then he just needed to find their locations, and he didn't mind going through some disadvantages that came his way. But Jacob had a feeling that it was the latter case, rather than the former since there were also the Star Ocean medallions in the picture that could grant passage into the path. As Jacob followed the legendary key's direction, he noticed that the surrounding trees had become denser and were growing taller and taller. Furthermore, the amount of mana in the air has become denser. However, he noticed something peculiar in the air at this moment. Something seemed to be mixed in the air which directly affected someone's mind. Is it poison? Jacob wondered as he looked towards the towering trees. These trees appeared like babool trees, but their roots covered the lands and they pulsed in emerald light. Some of these trees even had vague runic patterns. Furthermore, the three with those runic patterns have golden flowers on them, which attracts others' attention. When Jacob looked towards those flowers, he found strange mist emitting from them, invisible to the naked eye, and he instantly guessed that the poison in the air was coming from them. After his eyes of judge became more powerful, he was now able to see more, not just the color spectrum of particles, but also more unique details about anything with magic, and he now didn't even need to use his soul force to see those details. He was excited about what he would be able to do once his eyes reached the intermediate stage of their awakening. But right now, With his flaming eyes, he looked just like any lick, and he knew he could use his current appearance in many ways. Moreover, the Star Watch seemed useless here as there were no signals for Star Network, which also means that there was no interference from outsiders in the path of legend. However, at this moment, Jacob suddenly stopped and stowed away the legendary key before he turned invisible, hiding behind a tree and coldly looking southeast. A few minutes passed like that, but Jacob remained hidden. At this moment, a silhouette of a large beast appeared. Above this beast were three people wearing ancient-style robes, which weren't the norm in the lesser galaxy of Taurus. Furthermore, the barbarian with a horn glowing in the middle of his forehead was holding a runic disc in his hand and closely observing it. He suddenly opened its mouth and said to his other two companions, "The key traces vanished here." Jacob's eyes flickered in astonishment when he heard those unexpected words. "They can track legendary keys." Chapter 777. Towards the cosmic vestige of Taurus, Part 2. The barbarian and his companions, who were actually two white tiger face orcs, looked at the barbarian with incredulous expressions. "Did you break the spiritual star tracker, Captain?" The white tiger orc with a rune symbol below his left eye asked. The barbarian retorted, "How the hell did I break it when I didn't even do anything? Did you see me fiddling with it on our way here? Then could it be the person with the legendary key is already out of its range?" The second orc made a guess, which was the only explanation that I could think of. The barbarian didn't retort this time since he knew this spiritual star tracker had a limited range. They were searching for legendary keys in this area when it reacted all of a sudden, and now the signal was completely gone, but this matter still irked him for some reason. "We were very close to this person, but he suddenly disappeared. The only possible explanation is that this person with the legendary key sensed our presence and used a teleportation treasure to teleport over 100,000 miles away from the spiritual star tracker range. The legendary key can't be stored in any special treasure or hidden by any means. Since those bumpkins from backwater lesser galaxies are not capable of possessing such treasures, it's safe to assume that someone from our competitor had already gotten his hands on the legendary key. Let's report it to the little boss," the barbarian solemnly stated. He was about to control the bear-like beast when suddenly it trembled. The next moment, blood started to trickle down from its eyes and mouth before its massive body started to fall. The barbarian and his companions were shocked as they quickly jumped off the beast and landed on the ground with incredulous expressions on their faces as they watched the beast drop to the side while its blood gushed out from its eyes and mouth uncontrollably. It was deader than dead. "Who?" The barbarian was instantly alarmed as a bone spear appeared in his hand and he took his fighting stance. His two orc companions weren't any different. They all knew the path of legend was riddled with mysterious dangers and all kinds of entities existed in this place. This forest was also a dangerous place filled with unknown beasts. At this moment, the spiritual star tracker in the barbarian's hand was suddenly enveloped by a powerful force, escaped from his grip and slid to his left. Before they could react, very interesting. A spectral voice filled with chilly coldness rang at this moment, and a mountainous pressure suddenly descended on the three. They were horrified to find themselves completely immobilized under this horrifying pressure, and even their minds seemed to be affected by it. Furthermore, the barbarian instantly thought about something as he found this pressure familiar, and that realization brought him even more dread, as he didn't dare believe it. How could this kind of existence in this part of Path of Legend? He thought as he tried to remain conscious under this pressure, and he stopped himself from kneeling down, but his companions weren't like him. They were only able to endure for a second before they dropped to their knees while panting heavily. At this moment, a 2-meter-tall figure wearing a dark windbreaker and a hood walked in front of them. Two dim white flames burned under the darkness of his hood, making him appear extremely eerie. After Jacob heard their little conversation, his interest in this spiritual star tracker was piqued. When he saw them about to leave, he had no choice but to make them stay. It was also an opportunity to test his advanced prowess. When he tried to use his blood manipulation on that quasi-legend beast, he was surprised when he found there was very little resistance, unlike before when he could only manipulate the blood of an ordinary, unique rank. So without hesitation, he directly changed the flow of the beast's blood and made him die without even touching it, and the beast was simply unable to resist his control over its own blood. He could have done the same thing with these three, but then he decided to test his soul force, and the results were right in front of him. They were completely immobilized under the pressure of his soul force, and he wasn't even releasing it up to 100% yet. He could guess that if he had used 100% of his soul force pressure on them, they would have turned into blood paste. Nonetheless, Jacob was extremely content with this small test and had some idea of where he stood with his current prowess. The barbarian felt a chill running down his spine when he saw the hooded figure stop in front of them, and he wanted to plead for his life. but the pressure was simply too great that he couldn't even open his mouth. Jacob also didn't intend to ask them any questions. He simply issued a command, "He's yours." The barbarian was startled, and the next moment, a tiny dark creature appeared beside his ear before it bolted into his head. He had no idea his death was already inevitable. Jacob then looked towards those two orcs and decided to try something since it would take some time for Autarch to finish off the quasi-legend rank barbarian. Jacob focused on one of the orcs and his flaming eyes flicked, and the next moment, the orc's head suddenly blew up like a balloon, creating a bloody scene. Not only that, the orc's blood wasn't splashed but condensed in a glob before all of his blood was out of his body, and his headless corpse looked like a dry tree branch. While the barbarian and remaining orc were trembling in despair, Jacob was elated because he didn't use his blood manipulation at this moment. He did all of this with his soul force. It wasn't like he never tried to do the same thing before, but he was limited by the amount of soul force he had previously. But now, his soul force was like a vast lake compared to his previous soul force, which was like a small cup. Furthermore, he could feel that his control over his soul was far more precise and efficient now because of his spiritual nebula. Jacob also discovered another reason for his overwhelming control over his soul force, which was none other than his cursed heart. Comment after Jacob heard their little conversation, his interest in the spiritual star tracker was piqued. When he saw them about to leave, he had no choice but to make them stay. It was also an opportunity to test his advanced prowess. When he tried to use his blood manipulation on that quasi-legend beast, he was surprised when he found there was very little resistance, unlike before when he could only manipulate the blood of an ordinary unique rank. So without hesitation, he directly changed the flow of the beast's blood and made him die without even touching it, and the beast was simply unable to resist his control over its own blood. He could have done the same thing with these three, but then he decided to test his soul force, and the results were right in front of him. They were completely immobilized under the pressure of his soul force, and he wasn't even releasing it up to 100% yet. He could guess that if he had used 100% of his soul force pressure on them, they would have turned into blood paste. Nonetheless, Jacob was extremely content with this small test and had some idea of where he stood with his current prowess. The barbarian felt a chill running down his spine when he saw the hooded figure stop in front of them, and he wanted to plead for his life. But the pressure was simply too great that he couldn't even open his mouth. Jacob also didn't intend to ask them any questions. He simply issued a command, "He's yours." The barbarian was startled, and the next moment, a tiny dark creature appeared beside his ear before it bolted into his head. He had no idea his death was already inevitable. Jacob then looked towards those two orcs and decided to try something since it would take some time for Autarch to finish off the quasi-legend rank barbarian. Jacob focused on one of the orcs and his flaming eyes flicked, and the next moment, the orc's head suddenly blew up like a balloon, creating a bloody scene. Not only that, the orc's blood wasn't splashed but condensed in a glob before all of his blood was out of his body, and his headless corpse looked like a dry tree branch. While the barbarian and remaining orc were trembling in despair, Jacob was elated because he didn't use his blood manipulation at this moment. He did all of this with his soul force. It wasn't like he never tried to do the same thing before, but he was limited by the amount of soul force he had previously. But now, his soul force was like a vast lake compared to his previous soul force, which was like a small cup. Furthermore, he could feel that his control over his soul was far more precise and efficient now because of his spiritual nebula. Jacob also discovered another reason for his overwhelming control over his soul force, which was none other than his cursed heart. Chapter 778, Towards the Cosmic Vestige of Taurus, Part 3. Jacob continued his journey towards the unknown while following the direction of the legendary key. However, most of Jacob's focus was on the information that he received from Autarch after he possessed the barbarian's body. It turned out that the Path of Legend was opened over 7 months ago for all the lesser galaxies. Since almost all the high-ranking figures of the lesser galaxies belonged to the three absolute factions, their loyal subordinates informed the higher-ups in the middle galaxies using secret methods privy to these factions. Jacob wasn't surprised that the absolute factions existed in the middle galaxies. He already knew that these three factions represented the main forces of the Zodiac Plains, so their roots were extremely deep. But what surprised Jacob was that the three absolute factions were even more terrifying in the middle galaxies, and unlike the roughnecks in the lesser galaxies, they were extremely united. The barbarian and his two companions also belonged to the middle galaxies, and they came here by earning a slot in the entourage of Zodiac Universal Bank through some extremely fierce selection back in the middle galaxies. Furthermore, they weren't the only ones, and they only represent the Zodiac Universal Bank of the middle galaxy of Gemini. There was also another entourage of 11 galaxies belonging to the Universal Zodiac Bank, and they were all competing with each other and other powers to acquire the cosmic vestiges for the descendants of legendary kings. According to the barbarians' memories, legendary kings were known as galaxy kings in the lesser galaxies, and they were the highest esteemed figures of the middle galaxies, each controlling tens of planets. Yes, planets. The middle galaxies or legendary/middle planes were entirely different from the lesser planes and extremely mystical. This revelation shocked Jacob, and he looked forward to stepping into this place and witnessing it himself. Anyhow, the people from the middle galaxies could come to this place, because a group of legendary kings from each faction performed some secret ceremony and opened a path for them. The exact method was only known to them and a well-guarded secret. The spiritual star tracker was also given to their groups to seek out legendary keys, because it was the easiest way to track down cosmic vestiges and held a unique advantage over those who didn't have one, just as Jacob earlier conjectured. What advantage they held was only known to the leaders of these teams, and people like the barbarian were only here to earn the merits and favor of these scions of these powers. They were also under a powerful contract known as the Zodiac Soul Contract, to ensure they won't betray those scions or hide any information. That's why they were given those spiritual star trackers, which were normally in the hands of these powers. They can also track legendary vestiges in the middle galaxies. Since Jacob knew about the ranks of these legendary vestiges, he knew these trackers worked on any rank of legendary vestige. This answered another question about how those middle galaxies seek out legendary vestiges. Furthermore, the barbarian and orc seemed to have no idea about the legendary vestige ranks. They only knew that the 12 legendary vestiges that the legendary king's descendants wanted were slightly special and superior to the legendary vestiges found in the middle galaxies. After all, using the merits earned here, they can exchange an ordinary legendary vestige, especially if they find the locations of legendary keys. They can even claim multiple legendary vestiges from legendary kings with enough merits. That's what motivates these people to risk their lives for those scions and fight each other to earn merits. As for taking these 12 legendary vestiges for themselves, they didn't even think about it since they would earn a legendary king as their enemy, and they can't do it even if they want with the Zodiac Soul contracts in place. The people of lesser galaxies were ordered to either kill or enslave them if they held some value. Only those with absolute loyalty could join their groups and have any chance of entering the middle galaxies. The attitude of the middle galaxies towards the lesser galaxies was extremely disdainful. They all consider them farm animals, which they could raise or put down as they wished. Jacob didn't feel anything about it because he knew that for people in power, the ordinary people were nothing, and any threat would be nipped in the bud. He had experienced it personally. There was even more shocking information about the legendary plains, which would be useful once he entered the middle galaxies. For now, Jacob knew he had to focus on acquiring the legendary vestige of Taurus first before moving on to collect the other vestiges. He was also relieved to know that no one had acquired any legendary vestige yet, as those people from the lesser galaxies were scattered in the path of legend, and it was extremely hard to search for them. But this didn't mean everyone had a similar mindset as him. Some loyalists were in possession of legendary keys, and once they found their masters, they would hand them over without any resistance. People like him with their own goals were scant, and he didn't know if they had acquired any legendary keys and were able to hold on to them like him. Nonetheless, Jacob's goal for now was the legendary vestige of Taurus. As he went deep into the forest, the surrounding scenery started to change. At this point, Jacob slowed down because he saw the trees ahead were completely different from his surroundings. They were dark and there wasn't any light passing through them, as if those trees absorbed any trace of light, and the path ahead was pitch black. Jacob mused that it was probably another wonder of the path of legend, and the legendary key was also pointed in that dark forest direction. He didn't feel any danger from it, but he was still careful as he slowly entered the pitch-black darkness and vanished. Chapter 779, Towards the Cosmic Vestige of Taurus, Part 4. The pitch-black darkness didn't affect Jacob's vision, as he could clearly see everything. However, as he went deeper, Jacob felt the gravity in this place becoming stronger, and a strange mist filled with a potent toxin appeared. Yet Jacob's footsteps never came to a halt until he saw a flash of entral light suddenly bolting past him. He instantly stopped and looked around, and his golden-white flame eyes started to turn golden entirely. What are those? Jacob was surprised to see many white blobs of different sizes hiding in the dark trees' crowns, and black particles were emitting from them. Furthermore, upon observing them, Jacob saw that those white blobs were moving and that more were gathering around him. Are they some living creatures? Jacob wondered, but since he didn't feel any danger from them, he decided to ignore them and start moving again, this time using his full speed. Jacob almost became a streak when he moved at his current full speed, and he could cover miles within a second, almost like teleportation. His physical prowess was simply too shocking after completing the second phase, and he was still not using his entire power and abilities. But what surprised Jacob was that those white blobs were keeping up with him and following him like the plague, and more were gathering as he moved deeper into this strange forest. At this moment, Jacob noticed that wavelengths of the dark particles around those blobs were trembling, as if they were agitating and restless the deeper they went, and followed the legendary key. After some time passed, he noticed those small blobs suddenly started to congregate and merge together, incorporating into the massive, ethereal white entity. Even without the eyes of Judge, he was able to see a white ethereal cloud gathering in the sky. At this moment, Jacob finally felt a powerful soul force gathering within this incorporated mass. Although it wasn't dangerous, this thing, whatever it was following him relentlessly, and he couldn't shake it off. Jacob decided to summon Immortality before he suffered from his own arrogance, and this thing became truly dangerous. What is that thing? Oh, they are the ghost residues of Burmese ghost trees around you. They usually eat on people's emotions sneakily without the victim even realizing it until they turn into empty husks, and only people with special visions can see them. Powerful souls are the only way to counter them. But you are now immune to these tricks. Yet your soul signature is unique, and since you don't know how to keep it hidden yet, those ghost residues will see you as an extremely rare delicacy. They are even willing to incorporate with each other to feed on your soul, which is a very rare behavior in Burmese ghost trees. You can say you have hungry ghosts after you, haha. Jacob simply ignored the last part, and he became serious as he watched that massive cloud of ghost residues continue to grow, and the strange soul force they were releasing was becoming stronger. Are they any threat, and how should I deal with them? How do you kill a ghost? They are indeed a threat if you let them continue to grow. This place has millions of Burmese ghost trees, and they have also started to notice you. But the time required until they become a true threat to you is still quite far. As for how to deal with them, didn't I say only powerful souls are capable of handling them? But the matter of regretting killing the ghost race is entirely different, and we'll talk about it when you encounter that species of dark being. Nevertheless, it'll be quite entertaining, hahaha. Jacob's eyes flickered continuously when he heard Immortaka's explanation, and he was little revealed, knowing that they required time to become a threat to him. But he was still quite shocked, knowing that this kind of tree could become a threat to even a fabled legendary state ranker. After thinking about it, Jacob decided not to take action and continued forward. He knew that even if he used his soul force to get rid of those ghost residues, there would be more and more, which would only delay him further. After all, killing millions of ghost residues didn't sound like a simple process, and he was not willing to tire himself out. Just like that, the white cloud relentlessly followed Jacob as he followed the direction of the legendary key. Jacob could feel the gravity becoming stronger while the cloud of ghost residues also tried to inflict its soul force on him, but both were useless in slowing him down. At this moment, Jacob noticed something ahead while the legendary key in his hand glowed even brighter. A few miles ahead of him was a structure illuminated under a starry light, and the cloud of ghost residues behind him suddenly stopped following him as well. Jacob was surprised when he noticed the soul force on him suddenly vanished, and the cloud of ghost residues behind him instantly retreated as if they had encountered a terrible enemy. They were clearly very afraid of that struck in starry light. This action of ghost residues also made Jacob vigilant. He slowed his speed as he approached the clearly ahead. Looking at the brightly lit legendary key, Jacob mused, could it be I reached the place where the cosmic vestige is located? This was the only explanation he could think of, but he didn't move hastily. When he reached the clearing, he looked around for any danger, but there was nothing there, and his eyes did not show him anything out of the ordinary except that starry light. Jacob finally looked towards the structure under the starry light. It was a high tower reaching all the way to the neon sky. Its walls were emerald, and under the starry light they seemed to glow like a starry sky. Furthermore, there was only a single entrance, a massive black arc door, and Jacob instantly noticed the glowing symbol at the top of this door. It was the symbol of the Taurus constellation, matching the symbol glowing intently in the legendary key. Jacob knew he had reached his destination. Chapter 780, Demigods and Gods. Jacob slowly approached the gigantic gate of the monolithic tower. He felt an arcane aura emitting from it, and the legendary key in his hand glowed brighter. Although he didn't know if this was dangerous, he didn't get any such feeling from this tower except for the powerful gravitational force, which seemed 500 times stronger than what he had experienced in the forest. But it was still not enough to cause trouble for Jacob. Suddenly, just when he was 10 meters away from the door, an ethereal voice suddenly rang. The Tower of Taurus welcomes you, trialist. Jacob was startled when he heard this ethereal voice which seemed to be coming from the Taurus symbol above the door. At this moment, the compass, like a legendary key, suddenly hummed and released a powerful emerald light before Jacob could react. It suddenly seemed to resonate with the Taurus symbol on the door as the symbol started to revolve, and that voice suddenly sounded again. The tower detects the legendary key of Taurus. You are given 3 one-time options. First, you can use the legendary key of Taurus and directly pass the first 4 trials of the Tower of Taurus and take the remaining 3 trials at Star Warrior difficulty. Failure penalty is loss of legendary key, and you will only have 3 more chances to enter the tower again and take the unprivileged trials. The reward will be the legendary vestige of Taurus. Second, you can use the legendary key of Taurus to exchange for 3 lifelines, which means even if you die within the tower, you'll revive at the same point until your lifelines run out. You will also have the privilege to pass the first 2 trials of the Tower of Taurus, but you must pass the remaining 5 trials at Star Master difficulty. Failure penalty is loss of legendary key, and you will only have 2 more chances to enter the tower again and take the unprivileged trials. The rewards will be the legendary vestige of Taurus and a legendary Lord State Domain spell suitable for you. Third, you can use the legendary key to instigate the Star King difficulty level tower trial. But be warned, you have to clear all the trials without any lifelines, and the failure penalty is a certain death. The rewards will be the legendary vestige of Taurus, a legendary King State legacy or treasure of your choice, and an ascension permit. You may choose now. Jacob was shocked when he heard those 3 choices. He didn't expect the legendary key to have this kind of function. He always wondered what kind of advantage the legendary key had over those with only medallions. Now he knew why those arrogant guys from the middle galaxies were searching for legendary keys like bloody hounds, and even the legendary kings were willing to pay some unknown price to send their descendants here. If those people really knew about the presence of the third option, then it all made sense to Jacob. However, he was still confused about what this ascension permit was. Since it was the reward for passing the most difficult trial with a legendary king rank legacy or treasure, he knew it must be unimaginably extraordinary. But just the allure of a legendary king rank legacy or treasure was enough to tempt even Jacob. After all, he had seen what the broken legendary treasure Yin Sky Island could do, so what would a complete treasure be capable of? Furthermore, it would also become his most powerful trump card once he entered the middle galaxies. But Jacob didn't let greed cloud his judgment. Instead, he asked Immortality, "What do you think? Do you know what this ascension permit is?" Heh, well, it's not a big deal to reveal it to you know. You see, the legendary plains or middle galaxies is known as another name among the people, the demigod realm. You should know what this implies, the legendary rank in a sense and certainly the rank of a demigod. So what came after the demigod? Jacob's expression changed as his mind reeled when he heard this unknown yet startling fact, and he instantly made a terrifying assumption. He quickly replied, if legendary rank is the rank of demigod, then the next rank should be god. Could it be that this ascension permit is related to godhood? Ha 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 ha. The next rank after legendary rank is the mythical rank, also the rank of gods, and since the middle galaxies are the realm of demigods, the upper galaxies are the realm of gods. But it's still quite far away from you, so I'll leave the details of mythical rank once you reach it or come closer to it. All you need to know is that just like you need the path of legend to enter the middle galaxies, to enter the upper galaxies, you also need to either cross the universal void, the space between the lesser galaxies known as the star-ocean boundary, or seek out the mythical ascension bridge. And just like the path of legend, the mythical ascension bridge also required a particular pass like the legendary keys or star-ocean medallion to enter, and that pass is the ascension's permit, and they are the only way to enter the mythical ascension bridge. Furthermore, these ascension permits only exist in the path of legend's cosmic vestige trials. Acquiring them is even more difficult, and the participants have only a single chance. If they fail, they will lose not only their lives but also the legendary keys and the chance to open the trial for the ascension permits. So, now you can imagine how desperate those legendary kings have to be. They neutered their own descents with everything they had just so they could acquire this permit and ascend to godhood, and let me tell you, they would never give up. And do this process again and again until they acquired it, even if it means to sacrifice their entire bloodline. Isn't it ironic yet amusing at the same time? Ha 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 ha. Under Immortality's maniacal laughter, Jacob's eyes burned with intense heat. He felt his blood boiling as he looked towards the Tower of Taurus. At this moment, Jacob had already made his decision. Chapter 781, The Tower of Taurus, Part 1. I choose the third option, Jacob declared without hesitation. Although he knew the third option would result in the death penalty, he was also confident in himself. After all, no one with his current prowess had taken this trial, and this was his biggest advantage. Even if there were even harsher penalties, Jacob would have done the same thing since he wanted to acquire the Ascension Permit, or who knows when he gets such a chance. Just like the legendary key, the Ascension Permit was equally important if he wanted to continue his journey. Furthermore, he knew Immortality also told him about the Ascension Permit because Immortality knew if he didn't find this Ascension Permit worth it, he might not select this option at all. At this moment, the voice from the Tower of Taurus responded to his choice, and the legendary key suddenly released a strong light. Jacob felt a powerful pulling force, and he let go of the key. The next moment, the key turned into an emerald light and bolted towards the symbol above the door before vanishing within. You have used the legendary key to instigate the Star King difficulty level tower trial. The Star King tower trial of Taurus has been opened. The very next moment, the closed door started to pull inwardly, revealing a pitch-black opening. Even Jacob couldn't see anything, which surprised him. But since he had already decided, he entered without hesitation and vanished into the darkness before the door instantly closed. The starry light on the tower dimmed down, and only the symbol of Taurus continued to shimmer in mystical light. The moment Jacob entered the darkness, which seemed absolute, a void that seemed to swallow all light, Jacob's senses strained against the emptiness, but his enhanced vision pierced through the veil. The air was thick with an unseen pressure, and as he ventured deeper, the pull of gravity grew stronger, each step a battle against an invisible force. Suddenly, a flicker of light appeared in the distance like a beacon in the abyss. As he approached, the light transformed into a sprawling forest, its trees towering into the unknown and exotic flora, creating a serene atmosphere. Jacob was astounded. He wasn't expecting something like this in a structure. It was like he had entered another dimension, yet Jacob sensed something was amiss. The foliage pulsed with an unnatural energy, and dark tendrils seemed to writhe beneath the surface. Jacob's eyes started to flicker in golden light, and he instantly knew that this tranquility was deceptive. This serene atmosphere disappears under Jacob's eyes as many strange symbols are hidden within the foliage, and if the entrant fails to see through those illusions, they will be in a world of trouble and pain. At this moment, something unexpected happened. The cursed Immortality's page suddenly turned and words started to appear on it. Tower of Taurus Level 1, the Verdant Vestibule Challenge. Navigate through the treacherous terrain without triggering the hidden traps. Jacob was startled when he read those words, as he clearly remembered it was the same thing that happened every time he entered a plane trial. The cursed Immortality always revealed what needed to be done to clear a plane trial, and it seemed the same was true for this tower trial. Is this place like the plane trials? Jacob quickly asked Immortality, as this was the only explanation he could think of. But unexpectedly, Immortality didn't reply and went completely silent as Jacob looked confusedly at the cursed book in front of him. He knew the cursed book would never miss a chance to preach its twisted beliefs. Jacob called again, but he met with complete silence. Then Jacob suddenly thought about something. Immortality can't appear in a plane trial and always vanished. Could it be the same thing here? But the difference is that I can now keep cursed Immortality out while only Immortality is restricted. Are these changes because of the first phase or because of the tower? Although Jacob didn't know how much he guessed right, with the current information he had, this was the only possible explanation he could think of. Nonetheless, he was more than happy not to hear that annoying, eerie voice. Furthermore, if cursed Immortality could easily see through these trials and provide him with guidance, these trials would be a breeze for him. So without hesitation, he closed the cursed book and started making his way towards the path ahead. Although all he had to do was navigate through this terrain filled with traps, it wasn't as simple as it sounds. First, he can't be injured or trigger any traps or the trial will fail directly, and he knows the consequence will be death. Second, if he didn't have the judge's eyes, this trial would be even more troublesome for him, and he mightn't even be able to clear it. Without a doubt, this trial was extremely difficult, and it wasn't about fighting but about wits. If Jacob only thought that he would slaughter his way out of this place, now he knew might wasn't always the answer. As Jacob looked towards the towering trees, he found they were filled with hidden symbols, shimmering in crimson runes. He could see dark particles emitting from them. The dark particles always represented dangerous things, so he knew he couldn't step over them. But what made him solemn was even the trees were filled with these symbols. However, Jacob quickly discovered another school of symbols, which were green. White particles were emitting from them, and they were making strange patterns among the crimson symbols. Other than those two symbols, he found nothing else, and he instantly knew what he had to do to trek this place. Jacob was standing on a green symbol that covered a mile radius area, which meant he had to follow these green symbols and trek out of this place. Nonetheless, Jacob was still shocked to learn just how difficult this tower level was, and this was only the beginning. Chapter 782, The Tower of Taurus, Part 2. Jacob moved forward cautiously, his senses on high alert. He thought those symbols were the only challenge at this level, but he was soon proven wrong. When he was on his third green symbol, which was only 3 meters in diameter. The next symbol was on the tree branch, and its space was only enough to place a single step and lead all the way toward the other tree branches. He started to wonder if anyone could pass this challenge without his eyes of judge. He discovered that those runes were actually like the magic runes he was familiar with, and only a peak rune artificer could calculate the path through this place. Even then, it would take extremely long to find the correct runes, and there were high chances of making a mistake, which meant death. So this challenge wasn't only about fighting or finding a way, but also about the test of one magic knowledge. Should I try using that disc? But what if it's backfire? After all, I don't think this trial would allow such a loophole like a flying treasure. Jacob thought about using the golden discs he had gathered after killing all those assassins from the Atlas. But upon thinking about it, he didn't take the risk since he was capable of moving forward as long as his movements were flawless and precise. After analyzing the path forward, Jacob leaped towards the tree branch, which was around 30 meters away from him and 4 meters high, not to mention him, but even a quasi-legend could make this jump easily. But the moment Jacob stepped on the green symbol on the branch, the ground beneath his feet seemed to shift all of a sudden, revealing hidden pits filled with sharp spikes glowing in menacing red light. Jacob's mind reeled as he knew things were turning hectic. He quickly jumped towards the next symbol, and at this moment those glowing spikes started to shoot in his direction, and their speed was insanely quick. Jacob thought he had triggered some kind of trap, but since nothing happened, he knew it was part of the challenge and sighed in relief. Without hesitation, he dodged and weaved, his movements fluid and precise as he jumped from tree to tree while dodging those spikes. With each passing moment, his confidence grew. The challenges, while formidable, were not insurmountable. At this moment, Jacob saw creatures suddenly materialize from the shadows of trees, their forms shifting and changing. But Jacob was ready. His enhanced senses allowed him to perceive the world in a way that others couldn't. He could see the faintest disturbances in the air and the subtle shifts in the earth, and he knew those creatures were only illusionary. But their auras could shake even a quasi-legend, yet they were unable to institute any fear in him, as his movements never stopped while they chased after him. Now he understood why this place was called treacherous terrain. An unknown amount of time passed, and as he delved deeper into the forest while trekking in those green symbols and avoiding those traps and creatures, the trees began to change. They grew taller, their branches more gnarled and twisted. Strange, bioluminescent fungi clung to their trunks, casting an eerie glow. The ground became more uneven, with deep chasms and treacherous slopes. Suddenly, a colossal tree appeared before him, its roots delving deep into the earth. It was unlike any tree Jacob had ever seen. Its bark was a metallic gray, and strange symbols were etched into its trunk. But Jacob's flaming eyes contracted when he noticed something completely unusual. At the base of the tree, a hidden door shimmered with an otherworldly light. "Is that it?" Jacob mused with anticipation. Although this colossal tree looked eerie, he saw that the surrounding area had no symbol at all. After hesitating for a moment, Jacob landed in this area, and to his relief, nothing happened. Jacob then looked back and was astounded to find that the illusionary creatures and traps had vanished without a trace, and the forest looked ordinary. I guess this is it." Jacob approached the hidden door cautiously. His senses were at an all-time high. This was undoubtedly a significant point in the trial. After making sure there was nothing strange, he reached out to touch the door. The next moment, a faint hum rang, and it opened with a soft click, revealing a descending staircase behind. "Is this path to the next trial or some other part of this level?" Jacob mused, and with a deep breath, Jacob stepped into the darkness. As he moved forward, the air grew colder and a faint hum filled his ears. He was probably descending deeper into the heart of something. At this moment, Jacob saw an ethereal glow ahead. It was a barrier. After carefully analyzing it, he moved forward and the barrier didn't stop him at all. Furthermore, he had already summoned cursed immortality. The moment Jacob stepped through the ethereal barrier, he was enveloped in a world of stone. Towering walls of gray granite stretched into the darkness, their surfaces etched with intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change with every blink. The air was heavy with the scent of stone and earth, and an eerie silence hung over the labyrinth. At this moment, the words on cursed immortality changed. Level 2, the Stone Labyrinth Challenge. Find the correct path through the labyrinth while avoiding deadly traps and puzzles. It's really the second level. Jacob breathed a sigh of relief when cursed immortality confirmed his conjecture as he observed the second level. He didn't find any of those symbols on the ground or those stone walls. After observing for a while, Jacob noticed many things. This seemed like a maze of stone corridors. The walls were adorned with intricate carvings depicting unknown history. The path constantly shifted every 5 minutes, making it difficult to retrace one's steps. Jacob also discovered some clues to trek this maze. He found that sporadically, a tiny glowing symbol would appear among the carvings of a stone wall. Furthermore, after carefully analyzing this symbol, he discovered it was a word meaning left, and it wasn't the only character. Another character which means right also appeared. Jacob instantly knew what he needed to do now as he was ready to pass this stone labyrinth. Chapter 783, The Tower of Taurus, Part 3. Jacob's feet sank into the cool stone floor as he walked, each step echoing through the cavernous space. The walls were adorned with strange symbols, and the air was thick with an oppressive silence. Jacob moved cautiously, his senses on high alert. Every shadow seemed to conceal a potential threat. The carvings were more than just decoration, they showed clues to the path forward, and Jacob didn't dare miss any. Furthermore, he noticed that the path without any of those hidden symbols was riddled with strange traps, and he didn't dare step inside to experience them. Moreover, this time there wasn't a condition like not to trigger any traps, so he was more at ease, but still, he didn't dare belittle this place. As Jacob ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the entire structure suddenly trembled. The next moment, the walls began to close in, the pressure mounting. Jacob was startled and quickly picked up his speed. The path twisted and turned as he searched for those symbols, but to his shock, there were none as he was busy escaping getting crushed by those walls. Although it was still debatable if they could really crush him, he didn't want to stay and find out. The path was leading him in circles. Dead ends appeared and disappeared, and the carvings on the walls seemed to mock him with their cryptic messages. At this moment, Jacob didn't care about a series of deadly traps hidden within the labyrinth. As he stopped in these corridors with traps he experienced, pressure plates triggered hidden glowing spikes. Illusionary walls concealed bottomless pits, and darts shot from unseen apertures. Jacob had to rely on his eyes of judge-enhanced senses and quick reflexes to avoid falling victim to these treacherous deceptions. At this point, Jacob finally saw the symbol he was searching for as his body twisted, and the next moment he finally got out of that strange part of the maze. In front of him, the labyrinth now stretched out before him, a maze of twisting corridors and dead ends appeared. He followed the unique symbols carefully, his path a winding ribbon through the stone labyrinth. In this part of the labyrinth, he found crimson symbols appearing and marking areas of danger, their glow intensifying as he approached. Some of these areas contained hidden traps, and others were even guarded by illusionary creatures. Jacob's expression changed when the labyrinth suddenly trembled violently again, and he knew something strange was coming again. At this moment, Jacob suddenly felt the temperature rise and he heard the wind whistling. He quickly looked up, and he was shocked when he saw 4 burning rocks falling towards him. Jacob's agility and reflexes were put to the test again. He quickly dodged the falling burning rocks. Just when he moved to the next corridor, the walls suddenly turned bright, and magic blasts shot towards him while those strange creatures were charging at him at ridiculous speed. He quickly evaded those magic blasts and outmaneuvered the illusory creatures. His mind raced, calculating his next move while his body reacted instinctively. Hours passed as Jacob navigated the labyrinth, and even he started to feel somewhat tired. The challenges grew increasingly complex. He encountered puzzles that tested his intelligence, traps that demanded quick reflexes, and creatures that pushed him. It was far more taxing than fighting. The puzzles were quickly solved with the help of his eyes of judge, for they were merely patterns hidden within the walls, and his eyes could see through all lies and deceptions. Furthermore, those puzzles were not overly complex or required searching other areas to find clues, or maybe that's the case for him. Every time he solved a puzzle, new pathways opened and he carefully moved forward. At this moment, Jacob appeared in a long corridor. Finally, a glimmer of light appeared at the end of the corridor, which was quite strange in this gloomy atmosphere. As he approached, the light grew brighter and the entire scenery suddenly shifted. He found himself in a completely new environment, and he knew it wasn't an illusion. Around Jacob was a massive cavernous space filled with jagged rocks and molten lava. The air was thick with the smell of sulfur and the ground trembled beneath his feet. The walls were lined with forges, and in the center of the room a colossal forge pulsed with an intense heat. Furthermore, raw materials floated in the air, enveloped in an entral bubble. Jacob was astounded when he saw this strange place, and he knew this was another strange test. Jacob took a deep breath, his mind racing. He had survived the labyrinth and appeared in the next level. To confirm it, he quickly opened Cursed Immortality, and just as he suspected, the new words appeared in the book. Level 3, the Earthen Forger Challenge. Create an Earth Element Affinity Treasure of Advanced Quasi-Legend rank using the provided materials, treasure design, and tools in the 3rd level within 8 hours. Remaining time. H59 million 55s. Jacob's expression changed slightly when he read the details of this peculiar challenge, and there was even a time limit to complete it. These tower trials are fascinating. No wonder it's so hard to complete. It's not just a test for fighting prowess, but also the test of skills and knowledge. Jacob's teeth rose slightly as he flashed an eerie smile. Although it might be somewhat difficult for others, for him, this challenge was more than welcoming since his forging skills were something he was proud of, and he never stopped practicing and learning more. Since time was limited, Jacob quickly acted as he moved towards the materials hovering in the air, encased in those strange bubbles. Furthermore, he was astounded to find tools in those bubbles, and he finally understood why he wasn't given any, even though they were mentioned in the challenge. But first, Jacob moved towards the center of the cavern, where a colossal forge pulsed with intense heat, its fiery core casting dancing shadows across the cavern walls. The air was thick with the scent of molten metal and ozone, and the ground trembled with the forge's rhythmic heartbeat. However, Jacob's actual focus was not this forge but something beside it. Suspended in midair was a holographic interface. Its surface shimmered with complex diagrams and symbols. It was the design for the treasure he needed to forge. Chapter 784, The Tower of Taurus, Part 4. Jacob studied the design of the hologram. It was an arm guard called the Earth's Might, and it wasn't just a simple treasure, it also had an array of complex runes engraved. Although it's slightly complex, it isn't difficult. At least not as difficult as my planet Destroyer. 8 hours should be more than enough. Jacob concluded as he finally looked towards the materials mentioned in this design with pictures. After remembering everything, he moved towards those ethereal bubbles with materials and tools. As he moved towards them, the temperature rose dramatically, filling the air with crackling energy. The forger's tools and materials were scattered throughout this level, and Jacob quickly spotted the one mentioned in the design. Without hesitation, Jacob moved towards the first material closest to him. It was a metal twinkling with a starry hue called the elemental star ore, one of the main components of the Earth's might. However, when Jacob tried to grab it, his hand passed through the bubble like an illusion, and he caught nothing but empty air. Jacob was startled. He thought he would need to burst those bubbles forcefully, but that clearly wasn't the case. He tried again, this time encasing his hand with mana, but his hand again passed through the bubble. His expression turned serious. He was confident they weren't illusions, so he knew there had to be another way to get those materials. Then his eyes suddenly flashed as he thought of another method. He felt a peculiar undulation from those bubbles because of his soul force. This time, Jacob used his soul force to envelop the bubble, and to his surprise, the moment his soul force met the ethereal bubble, he felt its presence like any tangible thing. As for why he didn't use it right off the bat, it was simple. Jacob had already learned a painful lesson about not grabbing unknown things with his soul force. So he was meticulous about this point and only used it when he had no other choice. After all, he still has a long way to go before he learns about the soul force. So I wasn't wrong, these bubbles can only be touched through soul force. What a vicious thing to do. After all, not all quasi-legends can wake their soul force before becoming legendary rank. So if someone without it came here, they would be completely helpless, and once the time passes. Jacob started to understand that the tower's trials were extremely vicious in one way or another. They first gave hope and then snatched it away the next moment. Once his conjecture was confirmed, Jacob controlled his soul force and put pressure on the bubble. The next moment it burst, and the material within was finally free and floated towards Jacob under his soul force. Furthermore, Jacob noticed another point at this moment. To break the bubble, he needed to use some of his soul force, which was almost 5% of what he had when he was a quasi-legend rank. This means that a quasi-legend needed to rest between gathering these materials. Otherwise, that would mean wasting massive time, but for Jacob, it was no longer an issue. He quickly expanded his soul force, which covered a 100-meter radius. Although he didn't know what this area represented, he knew there was more to it because he could see everything in this range without any blind spots. It was like God's zone when he used fluid acceleration above 20x. Jacob didn't dwell on it for long because he knew he would know once he received that legacy or entered the legendary plains. At this moment, within 100 meters, the ethereal bubbles began to burst, and all the materials entered Jacob's infinity pendant. Since he could grab those materials and the tower didn't react, he wouldn't leave them here. After all, they were all quasi-legend rank materials, and there were almost 1,000 spread over a 500-meter-wide space on the third level. The task that could have taken a quasi-legend with soul force forever to complete was completed by Jacob within 5 minutes. He pocketed everything else except for the materials needed to forge the Earth's might. Now that the materials needed for the Earth's might had been gathered, Jacob had over 7 hours to create this arm guard. As he began to work, he realized the difficulty of the task and the importance of soul force. Because to use the furnace, one needed to fuel it with no other soul force, the tools were no different. They were unlike anything he had encountered before, and the forging process required a delicate balance of heat, which required soul force. Although he didn't know why this place ran on soul force, Jacob noticed that using soul force in forging was extremely efficient. His proficiency increased by hundreds of times. Now Jacob was even tempted to take this entire forge within his pendant, but he felt that the furnace was unique, and if he tried to uproot it, he might fail. So he was content with these exceptional tools. After figuring out the crux of this place, Jacob was undeterred. He focused on the task at hand, his mind a whirlwind of calculations and techniques as his soul force put to the test for the first time. Time flew by as Jacob worked tirelessly. His soul force started to exhaust and he finally felt fatigued. With each passing moment, the arm guard took shape. The final touches were the most challenging, requiring precision and skill to carve those runes. At this moment, as the last spark flew from the forge, the weapon was complete. It was an exquisite dark brown armor guard filled with runic lines, a testament to Jacob's skill as a forger. It took him around 3 hours to forge it, and his soul force was almost exhausted. But a surge of satisfaction washed over him as he held the arm guard. However, before he could test it, a pillar of emerald light fell over the arm guard in his hands, startling Jacob. But he didn't sense any danger and remained in his place as he could guess it was the tower evaluating the arm guard. A few seconds later, the pillar of light vanished, and the next moment in front of Jacob, a light door materialized. Does this mean I passed the third test, and this door leads to the fourth level? Jacob's eyes shimmered as he saw the arm guard in his hand. He knew that this was his reward since the tower didn't take it. Without hesitation, Jacob wore the arm guard, Earth's might, and with renewed determination he stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges awaited him on the next level. Chapter 785. Secrets of Vitality. The moment Jacob stepped into the fourth level of the Tower of Taurus, a cold, refreshing breeze brushed past his body. This place seemed completely different from the volcanic forge of the third level. When Jacob looked around, he was slightly surprised to find himself standing at the peak of a mountain, probably thousands of meters high, because around this mountain were nothing but clouds. At this moment, he noticed something unusual. A few meters away from him was a stone altar, and in the center of this altar was a tiny emerald sprout, which was very strange because there were no plants or even a blade of grass in this place. Jacob quickly opened the cursed Immortality to see what this strange trial was about. Level 4. The Earth Fruit of Vitality Challenge. Help the Earth Tree of Vitality bloom, bear the Earth Fruit of Vitality, and harvest the ripe Earth Fruit of Vitality in 2 hours. Remaining time 1H 59,056S. What now? I need to be a horticulturist, and I only have 2 hours to complete this challenge. Jacob was shocked. He didn't know there was agriscience involved in these levels, and he was stumped. Even if he could do it, the time was simply too short because he knew this Earth Tree of Vitality was most likely that tiny sprout. He needed to help it grow up into a complete tree and then harvest this Earth Fruit of Vitality. Jacob's mind raced as he quickly analyzed this situation. He knew that this challenge was doable since this was a trial. He just needed to find a way. Since it has vitality in its name, could it be I need to use my vitality to help it grow? Would the cursed blood work? Jacob thought that he had some attainment when it came to vitality. After all, the third stage of the first phase was about robbing others of their vitality, and he was proficient in it. Furthermore, he knew about the properties of his own cursed blood, but he still hesitated because he knew that if he used his cursed blood, he would be using his own lifespan if he didn't replenish it. That's why he didn't even test the Infinity Blood Sacrifice or Infinite Time module, because both abilities required cursed blood. And unless he had backup, he wasn't planning to touch these two abilities. But now he had to make a choice, and he knew this was the quickest way to complete this level. However, at this moment, Jacob suddenly felt the mountain rumble as if something massive was coming. He quickly looked down and was astounded when he saw the cloud ring a few hundred meters below the peak, stirring. The next moment, something ran past the clouds. It was an 8-meter diameter dark skeleton wolf with blue flaming eyes and crimson runes etched on its dark bones. It was a dark beast of dark beings, but what surprised Jacob was it wasn't the only one. After this one dark beast showed up, more and more crept out from the clouds until there were thousands of them, and they weren't showing any signs of stopping. The mountain's surface was soon craving with these dark beasts. It was just like an ant hive had been provoked. Furthermore, those dark beasts were charging madly towards the mountain peak from all directions. They are real. Jacob's expression was dignified when he observed with the eyes of judge. To his surprise, those dark beasts were all in 3 steps of legend rank. Could it be, not only I need to help this tree grow but also protect it? Jacob's expression went grave as those beasts were quickly approaching. This was too much even for him, but he had no choice but to play along. My soul force is still not completely replenished, and if I use it to suppress them, I'll soon run out of it, and that wouldn't be good for me. So I can't use it. I should use another method to get rid of them, or use the infinity blood sacrifice to help this damn tree proliferate. Jacob's eyes flickered coldly as he was forced to make a choice. At this moment, Jacob snapped out of his thoughts because a few black streaks suddenly appeared among the army of dark beasts, and in the blink of an eye, they reached the summit as if they could teleport. The black streaks suddenly turned into pitch-black crows as dark smoke rose from their bodies. The next moment, they charged directly toward the Earth Tree of Vitality sprout. HMPH, Jacob sneered coldly, and the next moment, his soul force bloomed in full power and those dark crows instantly paused in their spots under Jacob's soul force. Although he still ended up using the soul force, he had no choice since he was caught by surprise by their strange ability. But it was only a moment since those crows won't be able to do the same anymore. With killing intent shining in his flaming eyes, he clenched his fist, and the next moment, those dark crows, which numbered around 100, were blown into smithereens. This was the power of a fable legendary state soul force. Jacob quickly retracts his soul force since it is limited, and the threat is far from over. But at this moment, Jacob notices that tiny corporeal crimson marbles are scattered on the ground. They are the dark magic cores of those dark beasts. However, at this moment, something even more astounding happened. He saw the altar below the Earth Tree of Vitality sprout suddenly lit up. The next moment, under Jacob's flabbergasted look, the dark magic cores released ethereal crimson energy flowing into the Earth Tree of Vitality. At the same time, those glistering dark magic cores turned to dust. The altar stopped glowing once all the energy was absorbed. It was like a bolt of lightning struck Jacob at this moment when he saw this scene as he looked towards the Earth Tree of Vitality's altar, and then that endless stream of charging dark beings. Realization dawned on him as his flaming eyes burn. Blood vitality, soul vitality. How the fuck did I miss something so obvious for so long? Didn't dark beings refine life crystals with living beings' life force? Life force should contain their soul vitality as well, since they would instantly die once their entire life force turned into life crystals. Furthermore, the dark beings couldn't have their lifespan or vitality, for they required life crystals to fuel their dark flame, and the stronger the dark flames, the more chance they had to evolve. So it won't be wrong, their vitality is within their dark flames which exist in their dark magic cores. This altar had just proved it as well by directly absorbing the vitality within the dark magic core. I can't be wrong about it. How could I have missed this point about the dark beings and life crystals? It's not like they didn't have any vitality, but it's just that they kept it in another place. If this altar can do something like that, shouldn't I be able to do it as well? I have to research this. Jacob's heart raced as he wanted to try this because this matter was too important. Jacob was forced to calm down since he had to finish these tower levels first. Nonetheless, now that he had discovered this point, he knew how to help the Earth Tree of Vitality grow and bear the Earth Fruit of Vitality. From the start, the correct method to achieve this was slaughter. Jacob might not have been good at farming, but he was good at slaughtering. Chapter 786, Earth Tree of Vitality. After figuring out the secret of the Level 4 trial, Jacob didn't hesitate anymore. He took out multiple atomic grenades and activated them all. He threw them precisely 10 meters ahead of the incoming Dark Beings army. Since all he needed to do was help the Earth Tree of Vitality devour the dark magic cores of Dark Beings, it was straightforward for him to use the atomic grenades. Furthermore, those atomic grenades were now almost useless for him because they were too weak for anyone who could be called his enemy. He wasn't arrogant enough to think his current arsenal of weapons was enough to harm a legendary rank being, because he knew he would survive without a scratch from the atomic grenades. But it was a different story for the Dark Being army. In fact, this was the perfect stage for atomic grenades to perform at their full potential. Boom, boom, boom. Powerful explosions started to ring as small mushroom clouds rose from the mountain, following shockwaves and tremors. Jacob remained completely still as he observed the areas of the blast with his eyes of judge. He wanted to see if this mountain was enough to handle the explosion of atomic weapons, because if he ended up destroying it, then he would not even have a place to regret. Furthermore, he knew if he used the atomic ammo of Planet Destroyer, not even Magic Core would survive their terrifying radioactive heat waves. But if this Dark Being army were endless, and this mountain was indestructible because of the tower, then he wouldn't hesitate to launch a few sun missiles that he had to complete this trial. At this moment, Jacob finally noticed what he was waiting for. He saw that the area of the blast was completely fine, not even cracks appeared on the mountain's surface. Furthermore, hundreds of dark magic cores started to release the crimson mist as it flowed towards the summit where the altar was located. Jacob flashed an eerie smile, just as I thought, since this trial is about killing the dark beings and there are even quasi-legends involved. How could this mountain be normal? or a single spell from a quasi-legend would raze to rubble. After confirmation, 4 blue X-Sun missiles suddenly appeared around Jacob, suspended in the air with his soul force. He adjusted them to 4 different points and launched them. The dark beasts, who weren't slowed by the explosion or deaths of hundreds of their comrades, completely ignored the incoming calamity before the missiles exploded in the middle of their army. The booming voice was like the world had blown apart this time, and the entire mountain shook violently. White radioactive heat waves rippled the whole mountain and raised the dark beasts into dust. Those closest to it, even their magic cores turned to dust. The entire army was suddenly wiped clean by the explosion, but Jacob remained standing in front of the altar like an unshakable mountain. Even the shockwaves that could have previously left him half dead were now like a warm breeze to him. Just seconds after the explosions, a massive crimson mist rose and flowed towards the altar, cleaving a storm. Jacob could literally feel the vast and pure vitality, and he suddenly wanted to uproot this altar and take it with him for research. Although its function suited him, he knew it was unrealistic, just like that forge. So his attention was on the sprout as it started to grow at a terrifying rate. It turned into a seedling from a sprout as small, tiny, pointy leaves began to grow on its branch. Those leaves gave off terrifying vitality that even made Jacob astounded. This level brings too many surprises to him. Just the altar that could rob the dark beings of their vitality was a treasure of its own, but the actual treasure was this earth tree of vitality. By the time all the mist was absorbed, the earth tree of vitality was now a sapling, and this sapling gave off an intoxicating scent that could make anyone go mad with greed. Even Jacob wanted to eat it. However, he didn't lose himself in that scent. He knew he needed more vitality, so he turned his focus toward the mountain below. Although it was now filled with radioactive fog, he could see more and more dark beings quickly appearing. Some of them died the moment they reached the blast zone, but the effects were slowly wearing off since there were simply too many of them. Some of those dark beasts were even using the corpses of their comrades to move forward. I only have 2 more blue X-Sun missiles, 8 white Sun missiles, and around 50 atomic grenades left. If they are still not enough, then I have to launch hydrogen bombs, but they will cause too much damage. Well, I'll see when I reach that point. Jacob's eyes flicker with killing intent as he waits for those dark beings to fill the mountain again. But at this moment, those dark crows suddenly appear again, slightly larger than the previous ones, and they instantly teleport to the summit. But Jacob was ready now, and he instantly used his soul force to restrain hundreds of dark crows before blasting them apart. Although he felt exhausted, as he only had around 9% of his soul force left, he knew he couldn't avoid using it, or if something happened to the Earth Tree of Vitality, he would instantly fail the trial. After taking care of the ambushers, he launched the remaining blue X-Sun missiles, with another 4 white Sun missiles. Just seconds after the explosions, a massive crimson mist rose and flowed towards the altar, cleaving a storm. Jacob could literally feel the vast and pure vitality, and he suddenly wanted to uproot this altar and take it with him for research. Although its function suited him, he knew it was unrealistic, just like that forge. More and more world-shattering explosions occurred as Jacob stood guard in front of the altar, watching another massive cloud of crimson mist being absorbed by the Earth Tree of Vitality. This time, the sapling turned into a young tree, as its lustrous emerald leaves gave off a terrifying aura of vitality. Furthermore, Jacob noticed there seemed to be glowing dots on the leaves and starry runes on the tree bark, as if stars were etched on them. But what truly caught his attention was a fully bloomed golden flower. In the center of this flower was a tiny emerald bud like a pearl, giving off an intense aura of vitality and a mysterious force, which made one's soul feel refreshed just by taking a whiff of it. Jacob instantly knew this was the earth fruit of vitality, but it wasn't ripe yet, so he needed more vitality. Just like before, Jacob waited for a while for those dark beings to gather together before launching another volley of atomic bombs while defending the tree from those dark crows. Furthermore, this time, the dark beasts seemed to be launching a magic attack, but Jacob intercepted them by launching missiles and atomic grenades. The earth fruit of vitality was quickly growing, while Jacob was getting exhausted from using soul force. Although this trial was the shortest, it was the most prolonged and complicated for Jacob. But he persisted, and just when he thought he had to use the hydrogen bomb arsenal, he saw the fruit bud fully grown, releasing an intense wave of vitality. Jacob felt his soul force suddenly replenishing. Looking at the diamond-shaped emerald fruit, which was glowing intensely in a starry light, Jacob wanted to eat it. But suddenly, the tree started to wilt as if it had served its purpose. At this moment, earth fruit of vitality dropped from the tree branch, and the moment it dropped, Jacob wanted to catch it, but the next moment, his vision suddenly darkened, and he felt his entire body shift. When he regained his vision, he was no longer on the summit of the mountain. Chapter 787, The Earth Guardian's Chamber. Jacob remained baffled for a little while when he thought about what had just happened. Not only he wasn't able to get the earth fruit of vitality, but he wasn't even allowed to touch it before he went to the next level. For some reason, this left a sore taste in his mouth and made him somewhat resentful. After all, he expects to get that fruit as a reward for his labor and all those atomic bombs he had used. If anything, he hoped to get at least a seed of Earth Tree of Vitality so he could nurture his own, yet the tower didn't allow it. Jacob knew that fruit was extraordinary. Not only did it have a huge amount of vitality, but he felt pure soul force in it when it was fully ripped. He knew that if he could eat it, his soul force might quantitatively increase or undergo some changes. Yet the tower was even more vicious than he had thought, and he felt anger. However, he quickly calmed down when he considered his purpose. He had already decided to search for treasures like the Earth Tree of Vitality in the future. After calming down, Jacob looked around and saw he was standing in a massive stone chamber. It was plain without any decoration, but it wasn't empty as his eyes fell onto something. He saw a colossal stone statue about 50 meters tall standing at the heart of this level like a guardian. Its body was adorned with intricate carvings, and he held two battle axes in his hands. Just as Jacob observed it, suddenly, the lifeless eyes of this stone statue glowed with an otherworldly light, and a powerful pressure was released from him. Jacob instantly felt a sense of danger. He quickly opened the cursed Immortality, as he had already thought about what this level was about. He just wanted to confirm it. Level 5, the Earth Guardian's Chamber Challenge. Defeat the Earth Guardian without sustaining fatal injuries. I knew it. Jacob could only sigh. At this moment, his soul force was almost exhausted, and despite not having any physical exhaustion, he still felt tired. This was the most disadvantageous aspect of soul force. Furthermore, Jacob had already guessed the tower had no intention of giving him any time to catch his breath or recover his soul force. Now he needed to defeat that Earth Guardian without sustaining any fatal injuries. And from the pressure the Earth Guardian was releasing, Jacob knew that guy was far more powerful than a quasi-legend. He may even have a fable legendary rank. If he was in his top condition, he could have easily defeated this Earth Guardian as long as it wasn't a fable legendary rank. Even now, it was possible. But now he needed to replenish his soul force, and since this level didn't have any time limit, he was planning something hazardous. But he had no choice since there were still 2 more levels left after this, and he felt they would be no less dangerous, especially the final level. So he was willing to take this risk. Furthermore, he had some spirit tree nectar that could evaluate one's soul, but it was far from enough to current him. But it was still better than having nothing. At this moment, the Earth Guardian's 2 glowing eyes, like orbs of pure energy, scanned the chamber, searching for its opponent, and Jacob instantly felt a powerful sense locked on him. The next moment, the Earth Guardian moved like a lightning streak, and in the blink of an eye, it was already upon Jacob, swinging its gigantic battle axe at him. Alarmed, Jacob instantly dodged it. Boom. When the axe landed on the spot where Jacob was standing, a huge explosion occurred, and the entire stone chamber trembled under its might. Jacob's expression was grave because he could tell that force was not something a quasi-legend could display. He was now sure that this Earth Guardian's physique was at least of fable legendary rank or not far from it. He would only hope that it didn't have soul force or that his plan would fail before it began. The Earth Guardian instantly sensed he had missed the target, turned around, and found Jacob standing hundreds of meters away. Slumber Hex. Jacob instantly used the Slumber Hex to put this guy to sleep and buy himself time to recover. The Hex mana naturally followed after the Infinity Pendant storage space had increased to 10,000 cubic meters. Before, he couldn't use his hexes on 3 steps of legends because the Hex mana wasn't enough. But now he can curse 2 fable legendary ranks with this much Hex mana, and the duration of his hexes has already increased. But he must also replenish it with an equal amount of dark magic cores. However, in this situation, he didn't care about it at all. But at this moment, Jacob's expression changed because despite casting the Slumber Hex on the Earth Guardian, he felt the Hex missed the target and no mana was used. Before he could even figure out what had happened, the Earth Guardian moved again, and this time his battle axes shimmered with an emerald aura like blazing fire. Jacob knew the Earth Guardian was now using an aura, which would make this attack hundreds of times more powerful. The aura was strong enough to pin down any quasi-legend on the spot. Even Jacob had to use his full strength to dodge it. Boom! Another massive explosion rang akin to a white sun missile explosion, causing a powerful tremor. Slumber Hex. Jacob used the Hex again, this time before the Earth Guardian could react, yet to his shock it missed again. But this time the Earth Guardian seemed to be prepared, and at this moment, emerald energy orbs started to appear around Jacob like bubbles. Jacob's expression changed because those energy orbs were none other than aura. He had never seen something using aura like this before, But he didn't have to analyze this strange spell because a sense of dread washed over him as more and more of those aura orbs appeared. Jacob knew he couldn't touch them, and he wanted to distance himself from them, but they were all over the chamber, and the only place there wasn't any was close to the Earth Guardian. At this moment, the Earth Guardian's eyes shimmered, and those aura orbs released powerful undulation before. Boom, boom, boom. They started to explode one after another, and their explosion was as powerful as 10 atomic grenades. The entire stone chamber trembled under those explosions, and when the final explosion concluded, Jacob's figure appeared again. His clothes were in tatters, but he was not physically harmed. But rage burns in his flaming eyes with a hint of astonishment. So the aura can be used like this, huh? It seemed I had neglected aura and spirit while researching other things. This trial is revealing more and more interesting things. It seemed I needed to endure more. Chapter 788. New discoveries. The Earth Guardian's strength was immense, and Jacob continued to endure as he studied its fighting style and how it used its aura. He had never fought someone with this kind of control over its aura at such a high level. Furthermore, the Earth Guardian never showed any sign of soul force, which made things much easier for Jacob because no matter what trick the Earth Guardian tried, it couldn't scratch his skeleton. All Jacob needed to avoid was the battle axe's attacks, and they endured some pain. As the battle dragged longer and longer, the Earth Guardian seemed to have endless aura and stamina. However, the Earth Guardian's opponent was also a monster with endless endurance. As long as Jacob wasn't forced to use his soul force, his physical stamina seemed to be limitless, all because of the cursed blood. Moreover, Jacob had already noticed that he could turn his cursed blood into his soul force if he wanted to. But he tried to save it for a more dangerous situation and even hoped he wouldn't use it at all. The Earth Guardian continued bombarding Jacob with all kinds of aura attacks and physical attacks. Its physical attacks were capable of shattering stone with a single blow, and it could manipulate the surrounding earth, creating walls, spikes, and other obstacles with aura. But what fascinated Jacob was that the Earth Guardian wasn't doing all this with spells at all. Instead, it was doing it with just aura. It scatters its aura around the chamber and turns it into anything, especially the aura explosions. With his eyes of judge, Jacob analyzed every attack in detail, and as time passed, he became more proficient in it. It was a strange feeling, as he had never done anything like this before. At this moment, he realized that his eyes of judge could also see the hidden secrets of spells and magic. The endurance battle became an experiment for him. Furthermore, Jacob also discovered why his slumber hex was missed on the Earth Guardian. It was because the Earth Guardian didn't have any consciousness, or more accurately, didn't have any soul. It was like a puppet, and this was also the reason it didn't have any soul force. But then Jacob soon realized that in addition to the slumber hex, the no agility hex and powerless hex instantly worked on the Earth Guardian. Jacob had never used these two hexes before because the slumber hex was enough to do the job. Yet now he was realizing that they were different and more complex than he had imagined. He concluded that the slumber hex was exclusive to souls, while the no agility hex and powerless hex were physical hexes, and they could work on soulless beings like puppets. This was a huge discovery, and something he had overlooked because of how powerful the slumber hex was. Finally, the soul tether hex was also soul-related. Once he realized this, Jacob knew that he had been so focused on progressing in the cursed immortality that he had ignored everything else. So he was determined to analyze his abilities thoroughly once he got out of there. After all, now that he had a long lifespan and could replenish it with Nyx's help, he would use some of it to reorganize his skills and abilities while also starting the comprehension of the immortal chapter again. Moreover, Jacob acknowledged that he had become too dependable on his weapons. Now that he realized that magic could achieve the same kind of destruction, he decided to focus on his strength. Although the weapons were good, they were expendable. In the end, his personal strength matters the most. He was no longer a human with a limited lifespan, so he needed to stop thinking and acting like one. Anyhow, once the Guardian was hit by the no agility hex and powerless hex, its speed and power rank directly decreased to the beyond unique rank. So no matter how it attacked, it was like a child hitting a boulder, and Jacob could finally relax and no longer bother to dodge the Earth Guardian and focus on recovering his soul force. Nonetheless, the Earth Guardian never stopped attacking Jacob and continued like a mindless machine, which gave Jacob more time to analyze its aura manipulation in depth. Hours passed, then days, as the strange fifth-level trial of the tower continued. The bizarre scene of a skeleton sitting cross-legged while a massive statue continued to pummel him to no avail continued to play out. The trial would require anyone to defeat the Guardian. They would need to use all of their skills and abilities while dodging the Guardian's relentless, mighty attacks, exploiting its weaknesses, and turning into a resting area for Jacob. At this moment, Jacob's hollow eyes of Jacob suddenly lit up with flames, as he stood up while the battle axes landed on top of his skull, before they instantly retracted without leaving any scratch. "I'm fully recovered," Jacob mumbled as he looked towards the giant Earth Guardian, who was preparing for another attack while it was still under his 2 hexes. "I've already learned your aura manipulation and the pattern of your attacks. As a token of my appreciation, I'll put you out of your misery." The next moment, Greed's flaming aura started to spread from Jacob's feet and envelop the Earth Guardian's entire body, instantly restraining the Earth Guardian's movement like a bug caught up in a spider web. Jacob's eyes flickered, and the next moment the fire aura around the Earth Guardian instantly ignited, causing a massive explosion filled with high temperature. But Jacob remained unmoved as he watched the dust steal. The Earth Guardian was nowhere to be seen. His fire aura had completely pulverized it. Furthermore, the aura explosion caused by the fire aura was even more substantial than the aura explosion caused by the Earth aura of Earth Guardian, despite Jacob's fire core still at the peak of unique rank. Moreover, despite the power rank of the Earth Guardian plummeting by 3 tiers because of the powerless hex, its body was almost at Jacob's current body level, so it should be impossible to do anything to the Earth Guardian. But Jacob achieved this because he had used the special soul force filed with the aura explosion, taking it a step further. The result was nothing but disastrous for the Earth Guardian or any of Jacob's future enemies. Jacob had unknowingly learned a distinctive concept of Fable legendary rank at its initial stage, Soul Aura/Spirit Fusion. Chapter 789, The Earth's Riddler. Jacob was astounded when he stepped into the 6th level of the Tower of the Taurus, because this level was a stark contrast to the previous ones. It was a vast, open space filled with stars and constellations. Furthermore, the gravity here was almost non-existent, as Jacob felt he was floating in the vast, endless space. At this moment, Jacob's eyes contracted when he spotted something completely unexpected. A few meters away from him was a hooded figure, its face obscured by shadow. Jacob instantly raised his guard. He thought this trial was like the 5th level, and he needed to fight this hooded figure, but for some reason he didn't sense any danger from this person or its power level, which was even more worrisome. Yet an ancient ethereal voice rang before he could open the cursed immortality to see the challenge. "Welcome, trialist, who have conquered trials and faced the unknown. Your journey is arduous, for you walk the path of the unknown. You've conquered Earth, yet you seek the sky. But the sky demands a challenge new and bold. A test of ages, a story untold, this hurdle claimed countless souls. So face this challenge with heart and might, and prove your worth with all your might. For victory awaits beyond the fray, a triumph earned, a glorious day." Jacob was startled to find that this guy could speak, and his tone was cryptic. This trial was extremely strange, and he didn't know what it was about. "Who are you?" he asked while quickly opening the cursed immortality. Level 6, the Earth's Riddler Challenge. Answer the 3 riddles of Earth's Riddler in succession without failing in a single try. 3 riddles. Jacob was startled as he didn't expect this strange turn of events. At this moment, the Earth's Riddler's cryptic voice echoed through the space, cold and distant. "I, a scholar lost, forgotten and alone, seek secrets, mysteries unknown. Not worthy of your notice, I confess. But now I turn to you to put me to the test. 3 questions I pose, a challenge to your mind. If you quench my thirst, a treasure you'll find next. But fail, and in the earth you'll be confined. So answer well, trialist, and leave your mark behind." The Earth Riddler paused before speaking again, taking on a sinister tone. "If you fail, you will be trapped here forever, a prisoner of your own ignorance." Jacob could only accept this as he was determined to overcome this challenge. "All right, I'll entertain you. Bring forth your riddles," he said, his voice firm. The Earth's Riddler chuckled, a cold, mirthless sound. "Very well, riddle 1. I am born of Earth, yet I fly so high. I nurture life, yet I can cause death to die. I am a gift, a curse, a force unseen. What am I?" Jacob pondered the riddle, his mind racing. Although he looked confident, he wasn't. After all, how could he know the answers to these riddles? They could be anything, but he still had some clues. Since this trial was about Earth, the riddles were also related, but the answer could still be anything. However, his expression suddenly changed ever so slightly when the words on cursed immortality in front of him suddenly changed, and his eyes glowed intensely. All worries vanished in smoke as he replied confidently, "The answer is nature." The Earth's Riddler remained silent for a moment before he nodded. "Correct, riddle 2, a spark ignited, a flame that grew. A fragile gift, a treasure true, it ebbs and flows, a precious art. What is it?" Jacob glanced over cursed immortality before his teeth rose slightly. Without hesitation, he replied, "How simple, it's life." The Earth's Riddler seemed to tremble, a chilling sight. "Correct again. Riddle 3, a quest eternal, a journey long, a precious gift, ever fleeting and strong. To cherish it, to make it count. What is it?" Jacob was surprised because these riddles were more challenging than the others. He knew that he wouldn't have failed without the surprise cursed immortality brought him. He had never expected that cursed immortality would give him the answers and make this most challenging trial seem simple. He glanced over the cursed immortality, its pages flickering with an ethereal light. The words on the pages seemed to dance and shift as if they were alive. Longevity, he said, his voice filled with certainty. The Earth's riddler nodded, its voice filled with a strange satisfaction. Correct, you have passed the test. Proceed to the final level. The Earth's riddler didn't make things difficult and a passage appeared before him. Jacob glanced towards the Earth's riddler before entering the passage. This presence. I finally remember those words. The Earth's riddler, who was left alone, suddenly started to mutter like a madman, a seeker of peace, a soul laid to rest, yet here you stand, a trial to be passed. Your successor a spark, a flame so bright, will you guide their path or plunge them into the night? A question lingers, a mystery untold. Will you return or vanish, grown cold? Or is this your end, a final decree to watch from afar eternally? The Earth riddler's entire body trembled as its mumbling stopped before its confused voice rang. What was I saying? Did I forget something important? Again, at this moment, Jacob stepped into the seventh and final level of the Tower of Taurus. Jacob found himself in a vast, circular chamber adorned with intricate murals depicting the history of a bull-like creature. Each mural was a masterpiece, capturing the essence of this celestial bull. Jacob was instantly drawn to those murals, the first massive murals recovered, a cataclysmic event that shook the heavens, and the raw power of the cosmic forces slowly shaped a neon bull. It seemed to be the story of its birth. The next mural records a battle between the bull and a pitch-black silhouette that seemed blurry no matter how Jacob looked at it. He witnessed the courage and ferocity of the celestial bull as it fought for its survival. The details of the battles appeared like a blur in his vision, and it only saw the bull submit to the dark silhouette at the end. This dark silhouette gave something to the bull. Before the murals changed again, the bull appeared again, this time like a hominid. It seemed to be with a woman sitting under a tree in a beautiful garden. Jacob instantly spotted the fruit on the tree. It was the Earth Tree of Vitality. The scene suddenly changed in the next mural. The same garden was now turned into a lava lake. The Earth Tree of Vitality was now turned into charred wood, and chaos was everywhere. The bull seemed to be holding the unknown in its hand as it roared toward heaven, and the sky was filled with nothing but countless meteorites. In the final mural, the bull appeared again, and this time, with him were 11 more blurry figures who were surrounding the dark silhouette that was in the second mural. What the hell? Jacob didn't know what this was all about, but he sensed a strange power in those murals restraining even his eyes of judge, which seemed incomplete. At this moment, before Jacob could ponder over it, his attention shifted towards the chamber's center. Jacob saw something suddenly materialize at the center of the chamber. It was a hominid neon figure with a bull's head, and he looked almost identical to the bull in the murals. Chapter 790, Unexpected Completion. Jacob's expression was solemn as he looked at the corporeal hominoid bull in front of him, and he quickly glanced toward cursed immortality. Level 7th, the Wisp of Taurus Final Challenge. Defeat the Wisp of Taurus. So it's really Taurus. Jacob had already guessed the origin of the bull in the murals when he connected the dots and where he was. It won't take a genius to guess that since this tower was related to Taurus, these murals should also be about Taurus. However, he couldn't understand why many of his images of the murals were blurry, and the strange power hidden in them made even his eyes of judge helpless. Nonetheless, Jacob knew this final trial wouldn't be easy because despite only being a wisp, the opponent in front of him was probably a mythical entity or even something more terrifying. Jacob knew he had to use his full power and everything to defeat Taurus, but at this moment, something completely unexpected happened. The corporeal wisp of neon bull Taurus suddenly started to tremble, and then a bombing voice reverberated in Jacob's mind. %Y number D. The voice was so powerful that Jacob felt his soul tremble, and his vast soul force started to exhaust at a terrifying speed. It was a kind of mental defense. Jacob felt pain, unimaginable pain, just because of this voice. He couldn't understand anything at all, and he thought it was some kind of soul attack. But at this moment, the voice suddenly faded away, and Jacob was breathing heavily. He was horrified to find that almost all of his soul force had been used up. He looked towards Taurus, and then something even more bizarre happened. The hominid neon bull nodded toward him, and the next moment it turned into a wisp of smoke and vanished. Jacob was flabbergasted and thought it was another attack, but he couldn't sense anything. Before he could comprehend what had just taken place, he felt his figure pulled by a powerful voice, and then his vision instantly shifted. The next moment, Jacob appeared in an endless ethereal emerald space, and to his shock, his soul force quickly started to recover, making him even more confused. Am I under an illusion? He thought, as this was too strange. At this moment, the ethereal voice of the Tower of Taurus rang. Congratulations, trialist. You have passed the Star King difficulty level tower trial of the Tower of Taurus. The rewards of Star King difficulty trial will be granted. First reward, the legendary vestige of Taurus has been given. At this moment, under Jacob's flabbergasted and incredulous eyes, a crystalline emerald-green octahedron, radiating a sense of stability and growth, appeared. Furthermore, within this octahedron was the symbol of the Taurus constellation, shifting in neon light. Without any doubt, it was the comic vestige of Taurus. Jacob moved his hand to grab it with still doubt, yet when he grabbed the vestige, he instantly felt the pulsing life force within and a mysterious power hidden in this palm-size octahedron. It was like he was holding an alive planet in his hand. It is real. Jacob finally believed it, but he also became even more confused. He had no idea what happened in the last trial or why the wisp of Taurus just let him pass, and it was clearly saying something to him. Yet he was so weak that he couldn't understand it all. The shock that majestic voice brought him was still fresh in his mind. It almost shattered his soul. At this moment, the tower voice rang again once Jacob accepted the vestige. The second reward, Legendary King State Legacy or Legendary King State Treasure. Jacob quickly snapped out of his stupor as his mind raced. He decided to put this matter on hold since this reward was something he really wanted. At this moment, a corporeal projection appeared in front of him. He could choose from the list of Legendary King State Legacies and Legendary King State Treasures. He quickly read their introduction with 8 options between 4 legacies and 4 treasures. Legendary King State Legacies, -1, Cosmic Soul Palace of Invulnerability's General Introduction. This legacy will give birth to a Cosmic Soul Palace within the true soul. Thereby, the Cosmic Soul Palace can defend against powerful soul attacks and protect its master from true death. The Soul Palace's defensive capabilities are directly connected with the user's true soul. More information after selecting this option. -2, Cosmic Soul Artifact of Destructio General Introduction. This legacy will birth an innate Cosmic Soul Artifact within the soul that suits the user the most. The user can use the Soul Artifact to attack the souls and physical entities. The Soul Artifact power is directly connected with the user's true soul. More information after selecting this option. -3, Mighty Earth Soul Aura and Spirit General Introduction. This legacy will grant the user the Earth Law Aura or Spirit Affinity. The Earth Law Affinity will have an absolute advantage over all the Earth-related elements and increase power when fighting in an affiliated environment. The user can also absorb the vitality from Earth-related elements. More information after selecting this option. -4, Zodiac Soul Stellar Formation Taurus Constellation Volume General Introduction. This legacy held the secrets of creating the Zodiac Soul Stellar Formation and starting the path of Zodiac Soul Evolution. Disclaimer: this legacy is only a part of the true legacy of Zodiac. If you select this legacy, you must search for the other parts before you can utilize this legacy. More information after selecting this option. Legendary King State Treasures, -1, the Celestial Earth Blade General Introduction. A legendary king weapon forged from the heart of a dying elemental earth star, capable of cutting through any substance and inflicting law injuries. More information after selecting this option. -2. The Earth King Armor General Introduction, an indestructible suit of armor that provides unparalleled protection, enhances the wearer's abilities and protects from law injuries. More information after selecting this option. -3. Space Travesty Shuttle General Introduction, a vessel unrestrained by any space restriction below the mythical rank. More information after selecting this option. -4. Spirit Artificial Intelligence Cipher Phantasma SAICP General Introduction, a treasure created by Spirit Natural Intelligence Mechanics Ultimate Algorithm as a core. It has learning, reasoning, problem-solving, perception, natural language processing, machine learning, expert systems, deep learning robotics. Capabilities of the legendary King State Spirit Natural Intelligence Mechanic Race. More information after selecting this option. Chapter 791. Reward and Permit Acquired. When Jacob read the general introductions of the 4 legendary King State treasures and legacies, he was astounded, and a hint of greed surfaced in his eyes. He wanted all 8 items, especially those 4 treasures. Since he had cursed immortality, those 4 legacies didn't have much use to him except as a reference to control his soul force and learn more about the secrets of legendary rank, but these 4 treasures were extremely enticing. Every treasure is helpful to him, especially the peculiar one, the Spirit Natural Intelligence Phantasma SNIP, which was created with the core of a legendary king of the Spirit Natural Intelligence Mechanic race. Although Jacob had never heard about this race before, the moment he read the details of these treasures, he instantly thought of the artificial intelligence of the prominent organizations like Dark Rose of Dark City, White Sage of the Alchemy Guild, and most terrifying of them all, the Star Administrator Artificial Intelligence, SAI. Although there wasn't any proof, Jacob felt he might have stumbled upon the origin of these artificial intelligences. Nonetheless, it was only his guess, and he wouldn't know for sure until he had more information about this spirit natural intelligence mechanic race. At this moment, he was really in a dilemma as he looked at all these treasures. No matter how curious he was, since he could only choose one, he needed to choose something practical that could help him preserve his life in a dangerous situation. Jacob also noticed the unique legacy Zodiac Soul Stellar Formation, Taurus Constellation Volume, because it was the only legacy with a disclaimer, and couldn't be used unless he found all the remaining parts. He had already guessed where those remaining parts were, but this was simply too troublesome. He couldn't bother with it since he already had a universal godly scripture, so he had already given up the legacies. Furthermore, it wasn't like this was the only trial he would undergo because there were still 11 more legendary keys. So, as long as he got his hands on those keys, he could choose a legacy again as long as those trials had the same rules and rewards, and the same goes for the treasures. Once he thought about this point, Jacob instantly calmed down and seriously looked between those treasures. The first is a weapon and I don't need it, while the second is an armor, I can do without it. It's just that the law injuries in those two weapons seemed quite a big deal, and they might be something unique to a legendary king. But since I have no legendary king as an enemy in this place, I don't need it. Now the choice remains between the Space Travesty Shuttle and Snap. Both treasures seem to be related to magic mechanical technology, while the latter is even more likely to carry the secret of this mechanical race. Jacob thought for a while, and after weighing the pros and cons, his choice became obvious as he voiced his choice. I chose the legendary King State treasure, the Space Travesty Shuttle. From the information he acquired from the barbarian he encountered in the forest, he knew what kind of place the legendary plains were, so the Space Travesty Shuttle was the most optimal choice for him. It could not only help him in the path of legend but also in the dangerous legendary plains. You have chosen the legendary King State treasure, Space Travesty Shuttle. The treasure has been given and its details will be revealed to you. The very next moment, a sleek, aerodynamic vessel with a distinctive, futuristic design appeared in front of Jacob. The shuttle was roughly shaped like a triangle, with a pointed nose and broad wings. Its exterior was an inky dark metallic color as if made with fragments of space, and dark blue runes were carved in beautiful design on its metallic frame. However, Jacob frowned because this shuttle was only palm-sized. How was he supposed to fit in this thing? But he didn't panic. He looked at the projection, which had changed from the items list to the function list of the Space Travesty Shuttle. Space Travesty Shuttle Soul Artifact. Advanced Legendary King State Rank Introduction. Space Travesty Shuttle is a highly advanced spacecraft capable of traversing vast distances across the cosmos at incredible speeds. It is equipped with cutting-edge magic technology and features that make it a truly remarkable, unstoppable vessel. Soul Artifact. Space Travesty Shutter's body is made with a space soul totem of a legendary King State rank, making it a soul artifact with its spirituality, and thus can be kept in its master's true soul. Soul Artifact Acknowledgement. Anyone who wants to be acknowledged by the soul artifact has to prove their worth. Key functions: 9.1 Size Sway. The Space Travesty Shuttle's size can be changed according to its master's will. It can be decreased to a minimum of 10 inches and increased to a maximum of 1,000 meters. 2. Instant Hyperdrive. The shuttle is equipped with a powerful instant hyperdrive engine that allows it to travel through open and restricted hyperspace, bypassing the limitations of standard space. 3. Dimensional Space King Shielding. The shuttle is protected by a powerful dimensional shield that renders it invisible to any form of detection and makes it impervious to enemy attacks. 4. Life Support Systems. The shuttle is equipped with advanced life support systems that can sustain any life form by absorbing matter from space and converting it into pure life vitality and mana for a very long period of time, even in hostile environments. 5. Travesty Space Jump. The Space Travesty Shuttle can instantly jump 100 light-years away from its initial potion while leaving a fake trial, making it impossible to track. 6. Weaponry. The shuttle is armed with a variety of weapons, including matter cannons, missile launchers, and point defense systems. 7. Advanced Soul Sensors. The shuttle is equipped with unique space sensors that are directly connected to its master. They can detect and track objects, hidden dimensions, and enemies across vast distances, even in the vacuum of space. 8. Soul Self-Repair. The shuttle can automatically repair itself, even after sustaining significant damage with its master's soul force. 9. Travesty Space Blessing. No restraint or blockade can stop the Space Travesty Shuttle below the mythical rank. It is 100% immune to all elements, 15% immune to all laws, and 30% to space law. Fuel 2-1 Soul Force Space Travesty Shuttle can use its master's soul force as fuel to operate and use all its functions. 2. Legendary Rank Soul Totems. Soul Totems are optimal fuel for the Space Travesty Shuttle. Depending on their rank and the function the Space Travesty Shuttle uses, their time of usage can vary. This. Jacob was flabbergasted when he read the entire details of the Space Travesty Shuttle and then read it again to verify if he wasn't imagining things, and he clearly wasn't. He only had a single thought about this treasure: terrifying. Not only was this Space Travesty Shuttle the ultimate vessel capable of traveling unrestrained in space, but it could even escape while fooling its enemies. Furthermore, it was a soul artifact that he had never heard of before. He could even keep it in his soul, which was truly amazing. He was thrilled that this ultimate escaping vessel was now his, and he finally understood why its size was so small. But the only thing that made Jacob somewhat flustered was the fuel, which was either his soul force or the soul totems of the legendary king. Since this treasure was at the peak of legendary rank, he knew its fuel consumption would be ridiculous. Nonetheless, Jacob didn't miss its description, which revealed that this Space Travesty Shuttle was made with the body of a legendary king's soul totem with space affinity. This also made him somewhat fearful, since it was clear that legendary kings were treated like materials to create these soul artifacts. Jacob grabbed the Space Travesty Shuttle, which was almost weightless, very smooth, and cold to the touch. If he hadn't read its description, he would have thought it was just a toy. Moreover, the moment he grabbed it, Jacob felt a sleeping will in this small shuttle which seemed to be in slumber. It was like this shuttle was a living being. He was again amazed by this treasure. "How do I make it recognize me as its master?" Jacob asked. "Soul artifacts can only be subdued by soul force." The voice emotionlessly replied and didn't allow Jacob to ask any more questions as it continued. "The third reward, an ascension permit, has been given." Jacob was planning to ask more but stopped as a violet golden ring appeared in front of it, and a mysterious golden glyph was carved on the surface of this ring. "This is it." Jacob grabbed the ring, which was apparently the key to entering the mythical Ascension Bridge. He felt nothing from the ring except the glyph, which seemed to carry a hidden power. At this moment, just when Jacob thought it was over and the voice rang again, "The Wisp of Taurus has acknowledged you. The hidden condition has been met." Chapter 792, Unexpected Benefits and Soul Artifact. At this moment, Jacob appeared outside vast empty plains. It was the same place where he had entered the Tower of Taurus, but now the Emerald Tower and the starry light had vanished. It was now just a patch of barren land. However, Jacob didn't pay any attention to it, as he was looking at the celestial object in his hand with an incredulous expression. The celestial object was none other than the compass-like legendary key. It was still the same, but the symbol of Taurus on the legendary key was now turned into an image of a neon bull, while the rest of the 11 symbols were no longer listless but shimmering in starry light. The Tower of Taurus gave him the legendary key upon meeting the unique condition of being acknowledged by the Wisp of Taurus. The only explanation he was given was that he needed to get acknowledged by the rest of the 11 zodiacs, and the secret of the legendary key would be revealed. Nonetheless, Jacob was still confused and couldn't help but be wary when he thought about how the Wisp of Taurus reacted in the final trial. Now, he has this legendary key back, which was supposed to be used after he chose the third option. Furthermore, this legendary key was clearly different. The zodiac symbols were now active, while the Taurus symbol was changed. Lastly, the compass needle had vanished, and replaced it was an ethereal image of a half-white blazing sun and half-black moon. "Cursed Immortality, is this because of you?" Jacob instantly summoned the cursed book and got to the point, since this was the only thing that made sense. After all, he wasn't arrogant to think he was unique enough to be acknowledged by the Wisp of Taurus. The only remarkable thing about him was cursed immortality. "Ha ha ha ha, why do you think it's because of me? I was restricted in that place, how could I have interfered?" Immortica's playful voice rang. Jacob didn't buy it at all. "You haven't interfered. This entire time you were showing me the contents of the trials, and you even helped me through the 6th level. Do you think I'm an idiot?" he sternly retorted. "Hee, then instead of questioning me, you should be thanking me. I'm not playing your mind games, I'm grateful for your help. But you know, I can't be at ease when things take a strange turn, especially this kind of ridiculous turn." "Just what is your relationship with Taurus and other zodiacs?" Jacob coldly asked. "I can't answer that, just think of it as a perk of being an inheritor of a universal godly scripture for now," Immortica ambiguously replied. Jacob's expression turned ugly, but he was secretly relieved since his guess was right. But he was still somewhat uneasy. He couldn't do anything if Immortica didn't want to tell him, and he couldn't threaten or do anything to this eccentric book. Jacob calmed down as he asked another vital question. "Since you can't tell me, at least tell me why I was given this legendary key back and what kind of secret it held." You'll naturally know once you complete it, you've already known the method how to. But I'll tell you something you don't know. This legendary key can no longer guide you to other trials locations. But as long as you find one, you can enter the Star King level trial without its corresponding legendary key. The biggest perk of this key is that even if someone else has already entered the trial before you can still enter and interfere as long as they haven't gotten the vestige. However, the same things go for the holder of the corresponding legendary key. Like you, they can also interfere in your trial as long as they have the legendary key of that trial. The only downside is, if the person before you select another difficulty, you can't change it and appear in the same difficulty as them, and the same goes for the other person. If you choose the Star King difficulty, they also can't choose any other difficulty and must take the same difficulty trial. But knowing you, I don't think it's a problem, right? Heh. Jacob's eyes shimmered with astonishment when he heard the true purpose of this legendary key. He was really worried that someone else would clear the trial before he could find them, and if they failed, they would waste the only chance to enter the trial if they selected the same difficulty, or worse, fled the place after acquiring the vestige. However, if this key really helps him do what Immortality just revealed, he doesn't need to worry about it at all. As long as he gets there in time, he can easily snatch the vestige, and even if they fail and lose the key, he can still take the trail. Furthermore, the legacies and the treasures in the towers were too enticing to Jacob, especially after he had acquired the space travesty shuttle. As for being forced to undergo the same difficult trial as the other party, Jacob could still tolerate it since the legendary vestige was more important to him than treasures and legacies. Moreover, this would only happen if he didn't find the trial or the person holding the legendary key first. Now, Jacob was really feeling glad about getting acknowledged by the Wisp of Taurus, even if it was because of cursed immortality. Things were far simpler now. Jacob's resentment completely vanished as he asked, "If that's the case, then I have nothing to say, but I hope you can tell me when you can about these 12 zodiacs. Now tell me what's the deal with this soul artifact and how do I make it acknowledge me as its master? The tower wasn't clear about it." "Of course I will," Immortality promised without hesitation before it continued. "A soul artifact is like a legacy treasure, but unlike the legacy treasure that only had an unintelligent will, a soul artifact is intelligent with its own conscience. You can call it an artifact spirit. As you might have already guessed, a soul artifact can only be formed with the soul totem of a legendary king state rank, a true demigod, which also grants it spirituality and a new artifact spirit born. But the thing is, the personality of an artifact spirit also inherits some traits, and even personalities of legendary king state depend on the power of a legendary king, and how many abilities the soul artifact inherited from the legendary king's soul totem when they were alive. Depending on the personality and traits of a legendary king, an artifact spirit can be gentle, cruel, arrogant, unyielding, and such. If an artifact spirit is gentle, it will accept anyone with good nature as long as they meet the minimum requirements of soul force and reject cruel people. If its nature is evil, it will devour anyone who tries to tame it, and can even scheme if the other party is too powerful. It will retreat for the time being before bidding its time to devour its master the moment an opportunity arises. And don't even think that you can trick an artifact spirit, because a soul is a window to one true nature, and a soul artifact can easily see through a person's soul. That's why a soul artifact is a double-edged sword, especially those evil ones. Even legendary kings have to be careful while taming it. Artifact spirits are only loyal to their creators or if someone truly wins over them, Immortality revealed. Jacob's expression turned grave. He never expected such complications when it came to taming soul artifacts. This means he can't be careless with these things as long as he isn't absolutely confident in handling these artifact spirits, especially those evil artifact spirits. What about the space travesty shuttle? What is its nature? The thing is, you don't need to worry about such things as long as you can use your soul force on a soul artifact. It's good as long as it accepts you, but if it doesn't, all you have to do is overpower the artifact spirit. As long as it lets you imprint your mystic signature, no matter what kind of personality it had, it can never escape your grasp because you have the cursed heart. Chapter 793, The Lively Path of Legend, Part 1. In another area of Path of Legend, there are active volcanoes and the lands are flooded with lava rivers. On top of that, the entire place is swarming with deadly fire creatures, making it a no-man's land. On a small island above the rivers of lava, a few hominid creatures in full-body golden armor were constantly fighting the incoming waves of volcanic creatures as corpses continued to pile up. Yet these hominid creatures didn't seem to be at any disadvantage at all. They were like a well-trained and disciplined army as they encircled a golden carriage, protecting it from harm or attacks. Where are those slaves? Are they not here yet? An icy yet melodious voice rang from the carriage with a hint of annoyance. A tall hominid creature adorned in black armor from head to toe stood guard on the carriage door, holding a long white halberd with black dragon markings on it. When he heard the icy voice, it respectfully replied, "I've just received updates from the mercenary cordage. They had found the slave, but they encountered these lave beasts, but there is no need to worry, your highness. They should be here at any moment. HMPH, those lowly slaves can't even handle these little things. Get rid of them once they've arrived. They are unworthy of my imperial father's rewards." The icy voice rang again, filled with brutality. "As you will, your highness," the black armored being acknowledged without hesitation. "Head guard, the cortege has arrived, we can see them," a golden armored being loudly reported as he thrust his spear, releasing a terrifying golden beam that instantly slaughtered many volcanic beasts. "I'll receive them, protect her highness," the head guard in black armor solemnly replied, and the next moment he vanished without a trace. The next moment he appeared a few hundred meters away from the small island, right in front of a group of giants in armor fleeing toward the island. Behind them were thousands of lave creatures like hungry ghosts, and few of them were even quasi-legend rank. A giant with menacing tattoos instantly spotted the head guard floating in the air. His eyes flashed with relief and excitement as he shouted, "Royal Guard, help us, we have brought the key." The head guard didn't move and asked, "Show me." The giant and his group were startled, but they knew that if they didn't comply, this arrogant prick wouldn't help them, and they weren't worried that they would be harmed since Zodiac soul contracts protected them. So the giant quickly takes out the legendary key from the chest plate of his armor and throws it without hesitation towards the head guard. "Here, take it." The head guard caught the key, and after confirming that it was not fake, he nodded before saying, "You did good, but alas, you have annoyed the princess." His voice was filled with pity, but a hint of gloating disdain was evident. The giant and his group instantly felt something was wrong. Before they could reply, the head guard suddenly pulled out a white talisman and activated it. The next moment, a barrier suddenly materialized and instantly locked a 500-kilometer radius area, trapping the group of giants and thousands of lave creatures within while the head guard remained outside this barrier. "You fucker. Don't you fear the Zodiac soul contract?" the giant roared with rage. "Tusk, really a lowly salve." He clicked his tongue. "You can't even tell that I'm not directly harming you at all. I'm just protecting you by using this previous defensive talisman, and those beasts just happened to be in its range when it was active. All you need to do is to get rid of them, and you'll be safe." "I wish you luck," the head guard innocently explained as two glowing eyes shimmered behind the black helmet with cunningness, and without waiting for the mercenary's reply, he vanished. The head guard reappeared in front of the carriage again and respectfully shocked the legendary key. "I've executed Her Highness's order and retrieved the legendary key. HMPH, finally, we can leave this darn place," the icy voice muttered as the carriage door opened. A dense dark mist suddenly escaped from within, and a sharp claw emerged from within the mist and grabbed the legendary key. In another place in the Path of Legend, which was actually one of the floating celestial bodies in the sky. It was the ruin of an ancient city crawling with shadowy creatures that crawled in shadows. At this moment, in the ruin of a castle, a powerful white orb of light illuminated this place, and the shadowy creatures didn't dare step into it. Countless pairs of terrifying eyes stared at the group of people standing under the light, waiting for the light to go off and then tear them apart. This group of people were dressed like clergymen, with white masks covering their faces. They were gathered around a gorgeous figure of a woman in white bishop robes and silver manteletta. Her head was covered with a silver skull cap. She was holding a white golden monstrance etched with multicolored gems with both hands and seemed to be prying. "What is taking Archbishop so long?" a priest cried in terror. "Calm down, those vile things are afraid of holy light." The woman in bishop robes impassively stated, "I've just received a divine message, the Archbishop will be here." Although she may sound calm, there was a tingle of anxiety mixed in it. But she knew she couldn't show fear here, or things would go south quickly. "How unlucky, we ended up in this creepy place when we entered the Path of Legend, and that darn arrogant Archbishop is taking its sweet time. If I had known this place was so dangerous, I would have never left the lesser galaxies. I could have ruled over the Cardinal Spirit Temple for a very long time. Yet here I am, surrounded by these vile things and these useless fools. I've been greedy despite achieving this much with my background. Now my life is in the hands of another, again," she thought in frustration as she looked at the light orb above her. A relentless glint flashed past her eyes. "No, I have the rare growth-type holy magic core, and on top of that, the legendary key of Libra in my hand. Even if that arrogant archbishop didn't care about my talent, he cared about the key. He had to come here. Once he arrives, I'll be safe, and after getting to the middle galaxies, I'll be able to get the promised reward and achieve the legendary rank. I have to endure for the time being and bid my time like I've been doing all this time." The dark runes suddenly trembled at this moment, and an ethereal voice rang, "A holy justice god, guide your little sheep and cleanse the darkness." The moment the prayer-like chanting rang, a white light suddenly descended in dark runes and started covering every corner. The shadowy creatures suddenly screamed in agony and started to burn, releasing dark smoke and fleeing in all directions. The clergymen were startled before they cheered in joy. The only calm person was the bishop, but delight and relief were evident in her eyes as she looked at the illuminated white light. At this moment, something appeared above the rune. 10 white-winged horses with long golden horns in the middle of their heads. They were extremely eye-catching as they glowed in faint golden light, and people were riding them, wearing golden robes. The person in front of this group was an extremely handsome man in archbishop robes, and his long silver hair fluttered in the wind while he was holding a golden staff as they quickly descended towards the group of clergymen. When the bishop saw these people's appearance, especially their silver hair, her heart skipped a beat and her body trembled in fear. After a very long time, a figure that she could never forget flashed in her mind. No, they just look alike, she quickly calmed down. At this moment, the silver-haired man looked at the clergyman and sighed in relief before he flashed a gentle smile and amiably said, "Thank the holy justice God that you all are fine. Who among you is the previous pontiff of Lesser Libra Galaxy's Cardinal Spirit Temple and newly appointed Bishop Alice?" Chapter 794, The Lively Path of Legend, Part 2. In a gloomy swamp, the air was filled with poisonous gray fog, and ghostly shadows roamed around the place. But in the depths of this terrifying area was a clear patch of starry land, and in the center of this land stood a colossal violet tower surrounded by bolts of violet lightning. But at this moment, the once peaceful, solitary place was now filled with corpses, blood, and gore. In the center of this massacre stood a cloaked figure who was holding a disheveled, white-skinned goblin in front of it with ethereal pitch-black arms as blood trickled from multiple wounds on its body. "Spare me and I can promise you anything. My father is a legendary king." The goblin stuttered weakly, terror blazing in its eyes as it looked toward the cloaked figure before him. It was like he was gazing into an endless abyss of darkness. "Heh, you bunch of shits don't have a spine, do you?" An eerie voice sounded behind the hood, filled with scorn. "Aren't you hunting me because I have the legendary key? I was being nice, not taking action against you weaklings, but you just never gave up. Do you think just because you are from the middle galaxies and a son of the legendary king, this gives you the right to look down on lesser galaxies and hunt us down like dogs? And when the situation goes against you, you will get pardoned just because of your status. Let me answer this for you. If you're ready to kill someone, be ready to get killed as well. Now suffer in darkness." Before the goblin could plead or react, the dark hands holding him suddenly turned into a canopy of darkness, engulfing him entirely. When the darkness retracted back into the cloaked figure, the goblin's lifeless corpse hit the ground and its eyes were pitch black. The cloaked figure didn't seem bothered by this carnage scene as it sighed in disappointment and muttered in a flustered tone, "Despite being a legendary king's descendant, his soul was so weak. I didn't make progress at all. The same goes for his goons. I thought it would have been worth it if I acted a bit, but I was wrong. Only legendary rank could satisfy my needs now." After lamenting for a moment, the figure finally turned around and looked toward the lightning tower under the starry light, its eyes lit up. "Well, I guess I should focus on collecting these cosmic vestiges and stop paying attention to these weaklings." Without hesitation, the figure moved toward the door of the lightning tower, and a legendary key pulsing in violet light appeared in its hand. The next moment, an imposing voice rang, "The Tower of Capricorn welcomes you, trialist. The tower detects the legendary key of Capricorn. You are given 3 one-time options. First, same as Tower of Taurus. Second, same as Tower of Taurus. Third, same as Tower of Taurus. You may choose now." "Wait, what is this ascension permit?" the figure asked in an astonished voice, clearly unaware of the permit. No answer was given. However, she didn't seem to be asking the Tower of Capricorn to begin with. At this moment, an ethereal, deep voice rang in her mind. "You need to enter the mythical Ascension Bridge, which leads to the mythical planes or upper galaxies, just like the Path of Legend, which leads to the legendary planes or middle galaxies and—" Wait, this? Astounded by the information, she was startled because she had never heard this voice get so agitated. "What happened, old chaos? Is there some problem with this permit? Do you want me not to select this option? I can understand the third option is quite dangerous," she quickly asked, thinking it was because of the final option that this voice had reacted like this. "It is here, right in the Path of Legend," the deep voice suddenly said with a hint of excitement. She was again shocked and quickly probed, "What is here? My universal godly artifact. Wait, what the hell is going on? How's that even possible? I just lost connection." Far away, Jacob had left the Tower of Taurus area and was back in the ancient forest. He was now moving randomly in search of clues to another legendary key or the tower, while the spiritual star tracker was in his hand. Although he didn't know when he would find another tower or legendary key, he was sure that he could at least detect the legendary key with this spiritual star tracker. Furthermore, it wasn't like Jacob didn't have any target. In fact, he was planning on heading toward the meeting place in the barbarian's memories and apprehending the person who hired the barbarian and those two orcs and gave them the spiritual star tracker. Jacob was sure that the person behind them would definitely have more methods to track legendary keys or that the person might have already found one. Although he didn't know how much time had passed since he had entered the tower, he knew he needed to hurry or he might even lose a legendary vestige and a chance to get the legendary king's treasure or legacy if someone else beat him to it. Furthermore, the secret of the legendary key could only be unraveled after he gathered all the recognitions of the other 11 zodiacs. But this was his second priority, for the main priority was still collecting all the cosmic vestiges and completing the second phase. However, at this moment, Jacob suddenly stopped and frowned with a hint of confusion as he touched his skull face and muttered, "Why did the gluttony mask suddenly burn and I sense agitation from it? It wasn't my imagination. I'm not even using it right now, and it's only at the unique rank so it shouldn't be acting up since it has never happened before." Furthermore, now that I think about it, this gluttony mask is also a soul artifact, but it's bizarre and different from the soul artifacts described by Immortality. Immortality also never provided me with any information about it, but why did it act just now? Jacob brushed it off as a futile attempt to escape from his clutches. His eyes flickered coldly. "Since no soul artifact can escape my possession and harm me, you can only be obedient and behave like a good tool." Chapter 795, The Legendary Key of Aquarius, Part 1. In the path of legend, there lay a deadly mountain range, a land where even the bravest souls trembled to tread. The jagged peaks stretched across the horizon like the teeth of a slumbering giant, each one piercing the heavens, towering far above the clouds. The air in this cursed place shimmered with an otherworldly energy, charged with a power that made the skin crawl. The sky above was a perpetual twilight, neither day nor night, as if the sun itself dared not fully rise nor set over such a cursed domain. From the highest peaks, arcs of purple lightning crackled incessantly, leaping from crag to crag in a chaotic, unrelenting dance of raw energy. The bolts split the air with deafening roars, their brilliance illuminating the dark skies with flashes so intense that they left afterimages burned into the retinas of those who dared to gaze upon them. It was as if the lightning were alive, imbued with a malevolent sentience, hunting intruders with a relentless fury. The ground beneath the mountains was a desolate wasteland, scorched and blackened by countless lightning strikes. The earth was littered with charred remains, trees reduced to ash, rocks melted into twisted forms, and the skeletal remains of those who had been foolish or desperate enough to venture too close. The very air reeked of ozone and burnt earth, a heavy, acrid scent that clung to the lungs and stung the eyes. But as deadly as the purple lightning was, it was not the only peril that awaited within this accursed range. From the shadows of jagged rocks and the yawning mouths of hidden caves, there hide the lightning beasts, creatures born of the storm itself. Their bodies crackled with volatile energy, every inch of their form a conduit for the storm's wrath. Their eyes glowed with a menacing violet light, a stark warning to any who crossed their path. The beasts moved with a terrifying speed, their forms flickering like phantoms, impossible to see until it was too late. Each beast was a living nightmare, a creature of claws and fangs wreathed in an aura of electrical energy that could sear the flesh from bone in the blink of an eye. To encounter one of these monsters was to dance on the edge of oblivion, with death a near certainty. Yet despite the sheer ferocity of this land, there were those who dared to enter its deadly confines. At this moment, 5 powerful figures, each shrouded in a protective barrier of potent magic, were in pursuit of a lone figure ahead of them. This lone figure was tall and imposing, a crimson shield floating above his head, deflecting the barrage of purple lightning bolts with ease. His steps were swift and purposeful, yet there was a deliberate nature to his movements, as if he were leading his pursuers deeper into the mountain range. The 5 figures behind him were desperate, their focus entirely on capturing the fleeing man. They seemed to pay little heed to the deadly environment around them, their powerful barriers holding off the onslaught of lightning. But as they ventured further into the mountains, the landscape grew ever more treacherous. The air buzzed with increasing intensity, and the ground beneath them began to tremble as if the very mountain was alive, sensing their presence. Suddenly the terrain shifted. The group stumbled upon a deep canyon that cut through the heart of the mountain range, its depths shrouded in darkness. The canyon seemed to yawn open before them, a black void that seemed to stretch endlessly downward. The sides of the canyon were steep and jagged, making retreat impossible. Without hesitation, the lone figure leaped into the canyon, disappearing into the shadows below. The 5 pursuers hesitated for only a moment before following, their desperation overriding their caution. As they descended, the air grew thicker with the scent of ozone, and the sound of crackling electricity filled their ears. The walls of the canyon were lined with veins of purple energy, pulsing and throbbing like the lifeblood of the mountain itself. The lightning beasts that had been patrolling the mountain slopes above now circled the canyon's rim, their eyes glowing with malevolent hunger. Sensing prey, they began to converge on the intruders with terrifying speed. The six figures landed at the bottom of the canyon, their barriers flickering as they absorbed the impact. They were now surrounded on all sides, the lightning beasts closing in, their growls resonating with the low rumble of distant thunder. The beasts moved as one, descending upon the group with a fury that mirrored the storm above. But these were no ordinary travelers. Each of the six figures unleashed their own magic in response, creating a dazzling display of power that lit up the canyon. The air was filled with the crackling of energy as spells clashed with the beasts' attacks. For a moment, it seemed as though the beasts might overwhelm them, but the figures moved with precision, their combined strength pushing back the onslaught. As the last of the beasts was vanquished, the canyon fell silent, save for the distant rumble of thunder from above. The six figures now stood facing each other in the shadowed depths of the canyon, the tension between them palpable. Their barriers were flickering, weakened by the battle, but their resolve remained unbroken. The man with the crimson shield lowered it, his eyes narrowing as he regarded his pursuers. "So you've finally caught up," he said, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. "But did you really think it would be that easy to take it from me?" One of the pursuers, a woman with a barrier that glowed with a faint golden light, stepped forward, her tone icy. "I admit you've successfully lured us here, but in the end you have underestimated us. You might be the heir of the Thunder Galaxy King, but don't forget, I'm also the Myriad Galaxy Guardian's heir. You cannot escape this time. Surrender now and sign a soul contract with me and I'll spare your life." The man chuckled, the sound devoid of humor. "Tisk, tisk, should I feel honored or insulted that the princess of the little Myriad Galaxy Guardian wants to enslave me? Did your confidence come from these toy boys of yours? You're too full of yourself and I despise that trait the most." Without another word, the man turned and sprinted deeper into the canyon, his speed leaving the others little choice but to follow. The canyon twisted and turned, its walls narrowing and widening in unpredictable patterns. The air grew colder, and the sound of the storm above seemed to fade, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed in on all sides. Finally, the canyon opened up into a wide chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. The walls were lined with strange, glowing runes that pulsed with ancient energy. In the center of the chamber stood a massive stone altar, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change under the flickering light. The man with the crimson shield came to a stop before the altar, turning to face his pursuers once more. "This is the end of the line," he said, his voice cold and resolute. "Only one of us will leave this place alive. Don't be afraid. He's just a dying man trying to play mind tricks." The woman coldly replied, though she was secretly vigilant. The place was too strange, yet she couldn't help but feel excitement at the thought of hidden treasures within. The five pursuers spread out, forming a loose circle around the man. Their barriers flared to life once more, each one glowing with a different hue. The air between them crackled with tension, the promise of violence hanging heavy in the air. For a moment there was only silence. Then, with a roar that echoed through the chamber, the battle began. Chapter 796, The Legendary Key of Aquarius, Part 2. The tension in the chamber was palpable. Each one was a quasi-legend of immense power, especially the lone man and the woman leading the other four. These two were the heirs of legendary kings, and the education and training they had received were the best of the best. Moreover, they had already awakened their soul force and were equipped with at least one Fable legendary rank treasure, a privilege only for the heir of legendary kings. But it was clear that only one would leave this place alive. The ancient runes on the walls pulsed with an eerie light, casting flickering shadows across the stone floor as the combatants didn't take direct action, as if they were all wary. At this moment, the man with the crimson shield was the first to move. He lunged forward with a speed that defied the eye, his shield blazing with a crimson glow that lit up the chamber. Undoubtedly, an initial Fable legendary rank treasure required not only mana but also soul force to operate. He swung it like a weapon, the force behind the blow enough to shatter the stone. The closest of the woman's allies, a burly man encased in an emerald barrier, barely had time to react before the shield struck him with the force of a thunderclap. His barrier crumpled under the impact, and he was sent flying across the chamber, crashing into the wall with a sickening thud. Blood spattered across the floor as his body went limp. "Bastard!" His allies cried in alarm while the woman remained composed, yet her eyes flickered with killing intent, with a hint of solemnity as a golden staff appeared in her hand. There was no time to dwell on the fallen. The others moved in quickly, flanking the man with the shield. A lean figure with a barrier of icy blue slashed at him with a blade that shimmered with frost. The woman herself, her golden barrier glowing fiercely with the staff in her hand as she hung back slightly, directing the battle with a calculating gaze. She was waiting, biding her time. The man with the crimson shield parried the blade of frost with a swift motion, but the attack left him open for a split second. Another pursuer wielding a pair of blazing swords struck from the side, aiming for the man's exposed flank. The swords connected with the crimson barrier around the man, sending a shower of sparks into the air. The barrier held, but the force of the strike staggered him. Although he had a legendary rank treasure, operating it with quasi-legend rank strength was another story. Each time he used it, a large chunk of his small soul force would be used. "Press him, don't let him recover," the woman ordered, her voice cold and commanding, as she knew she had the absolute advantage. The pursuers obeyed, converging on the man with a relentless assault. Magic flared as spells were unleashed. Blazing meteorites, shards of ice, and bolts of pure energy all rained down upon him. The man's shield spun with incredible speed, deflecting the attacks, but the strain was beginning to show. His movements were growing slower, his breathing heavier. With a sudden, vicious swipe, the man shattered the barrier of one of the attackers, a woman cloaked in shadows. She screamed as the crimson shield tore through her defenses and her body, sending her crumpling to the ground. The man tried to press the advantage, but the others were too quick. Another blade sliced through the air, catching him across the back. Blood sprayed, staining the ancient stones beneath them. He grunted in pain but kept fighting, driven by sheer willpower. His eyes were locked on the woman with the golden staff, his resolve unwavering. He knew she was the true threat, the mastermind behind this ambush. The others were merely pawns, expendable in her eyes, and it was becoming clear that she intended to use them that way. The man with the crimson shield was wearing down, and she could see it. "Finish him off," she commanded, and her remaining allies surged forward, throwing everything they had at him. The air filled with the crackling of magic and the roar of battle. The man's shield blocked the worst of the onslaught, but there were too many, and his strength was failing as his soul force were on the brink of exhausting. At this moment, the barrier flickered, cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. The woman with the golden staff watched with a predatory gaze, her eyes glinting with the thrill of victory. Just as the barrier of shield finally shattered under the relentless assault, the woman made her move. She decisively directed a pulse of golden energy at one of her remaining allies, sending him crashing into the man with the crimson shield. The impact drove the last breath from the man's lungs, and the force of it obliterated the final vestiges of his defenses. The ally she sacrificed screamed in shock and agony as the man's desperate last strike cleaved through him, killing him instantly. The woman with the golden staff barely flinched as her ally's blood sprayed across the chamber. She was already preparing her final attack. The man with the crimson shield was on his knees, barely able to stay upright. Blood streamed from his wounds and his breathing was ragged, yet still he glared at her, defiance blazing in his eyes. "You won't win, not like this." But the woman merely smiled, her golden staff shimmering with power. "Just die," she sneered, her voice filled with cold satisfaction. She raised her staff, gathering her energy for the final blow. The man with the crimson shield tried to rise, but his body betrayed him. His vision blurred, darkness closing in at the edges. He knew he was finished, but he refused to yield even in his last moments. At this moment, a golden talisman appeared in his hand, but his expression suddenly changed when he felt the talisman didn't activate. "Heh, do you think I won't know you have an escape talisman? My fable legendary rank mystical golden staff can lock the surrounding space. Now stop struggling," she viciously snickered. The man was in despair as he never expected this. He was unwilling to die in this place. His hand tightened around the hilt of his weapon, ready to strike one last time, but it was too late, and the woman had no intention of giving him any chance. The woman unleashed her final attack, a lance of golden energy that tore through the air and struck the man in the chest. His body jerked as the energy coursed through him, and then he collapsed, his life finally extinguished. The chamber fell silent, the echoes of the battle fading into the darkness. The woman with the golden staff stood amidst the carnage, her chest heaving with exhaustion. She had won, but the cost had been high. Her allies, those she had used as shields, lay dead around her. Yet there was no remorse in her eyes, only the fierce, burning excitement of victory. She stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the crimson shield now lying abandoned on the cold stone floor. Reaching down, she picked it up, feeling the power thrumming within it. A smile crept across her lips. It had been worth it. Everything she had sacrificed, everything she had endured had led to this moment. Now this legendary shield was hers, and with it, the legendary key that would grant her the power she had long sought. But even as she savored her triumph, a faint unease stirred in the back of her mind. The chamber was too quiet, the victory too easy. She glanced around, her instincts sharp despite her weariness. The runes on the walls still pulsed with that strange, ancient energy. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding. However, she pushed the feeling aside. She had won. Nothing could take that from her. Clutching the crimson shield tightly, she crouched down and took the man's space ring. Then she searched through his clothes and finally found the shimmering legendary key wrapped in cloth within the man's robes. But at this moment, a sense of impending death suddenly appeared as the fine hair on her body stood, and a chill ran down her spine. She knew something was wrong as her soul force was stirring in warning on its own, but she had almost used it all. Nonetheless, as ruthless and cunning as she was, she instantly reacted as a dark gray talisman appeared in her hand. But before she could even use it, her vision suddenly started to fade as she heard two fleeting words, like a death sentence. Slumber Hex, Chapter 797, The Legendary Key of Aquarius, Part 3. 2 days ago, Jacob moved silently through the ancient forest's dense underbrush. His senses heightened as he followed the trail left by the barbarians' group. Autark had already sifted through the memories of the barbarian Jacob had captured, extracting every detail that might lead him to the rendezvous point. The barbarian was actually one of the loyal followers of the princess of the Myriad Galaxy Guardian, an independent power of Leo Galaxy. Jacob's eyes narrowed as he navigated the twisted trees. The group had been cautious, covering their tracks well, but they hadn't anticipated someone with Jacob's skills would be hunting them. After hours of tracking, Jacob arrived at a secluded clearing where the trees parted to reveal a small, hidden glade. His gaze swept over the area, searching for any sign of the woman's group. The barbarian's memories had led him here, but it seemed deserted. He frowned, knowing there had to be something more. The group wouldn't have chosen this place for no reason. Then suddenly he whispered a chant in a runic tongue, one Autark had pulled from the barbarian's mind, a spell known only to members of the woman's group. As he finished the incantation, the air shimmered before him and faint, glowing runes appeared, etched into the ground in a circular pattern. A message, Jacob murmured to himself, recognizing the cryptic runes as a form of magical communication. He studied them intently, his mind racing as he deciphered their meaning. It was a directive, a set of coordinates, and a warning, only visible to those who knew the spell. The runes indicated a location beyond the forest, near the outskirts of an ancient ruin where the group had agreed to regroup. Without wasting time, Jacob retraced his steps back to the forest's edge and made his way to the new location, moving with the agility of a shadow. When he arrived, he found the group encamped near the ruins, their figures barely visible in the fading light. He remained concealed, cloaking his presence with a stealth that made him invisible to even the sharpest senses. The woman, now fully in command, was at the center of the group, her posture exuding confidence and authority. 4 of her men were gathered around her, listening intently as she discussed their next move. "One of our scouts has already confirmed it," she was saying, her voice low but clear. "The heir of the Thunder Galaxy King has been spotted. He's killed a lesser galaxy idiot and taken the legendary key of Aquarius." Murmurs spread through the group, a mixture of admiration and tension. The woman continued, her eyes gleaming with ambition and calculation. "This is our chance. The heir is strong, no doubt, but he's still inexperienced. If we move quickly, we can catch him off guard and take the key for ourselves. Once we succeed, you all will be generously rewarded for your work, and I promise that once I become a legendary king, I'll owe everyone here a favor." The mercenaries' eyes shimmered with excitement as they nodded in agreement, their expressions hardening with resolve. They began to prepare, gathering their gear and weapons in silence. The woman's eyes flickered with excitement, and her mind was already calculating their approach. But they had no idea Jacob had already observed all of this from the shadows, his mind working just as swiftly. Although he didn't know who this heir of the Thunder Galaxy King was, since he had the legendary key and this woman was already going after him, Jacob decided to remain hidden and bid his time. They were now players in his game, but players that could potentially be exploited. He could see that the woman's plan was sound, her group was skilled, and their numbers gave them an advantage if that guy was alone. However, she had no idea he was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the woman led her group out of the encampment, Jacob followed at a distance, his steps silent as a breeze. He trailed them for hours, his patience unyielding as he remained hidden from sight. The group moved quickly, driven by their desire to catch the heir and claim the key. Finally, they reached a secluded area where the heir seemed to be hiding. The woman and her group slowed, their senses on high alert as they prepared to confront their target. Jacob could see the excitement in the woman's eyes as she anticipated the impending battle. Jacob watched intently as the woman's group closed in on their target, but he was surprised when a crimson streak of light suddenly bolted in another direction. He quickly saw the lone man with the crimson shield fleeing. It was an unexpected situation for both the woman and Jacob even wanted to use his slumber hex on him. Still, he hesitated when he saw the woman and her group instantly chase after the guy with the shield. Although he didn't know who this heir of the Thunder Galaxy King was, since he had the legendary key and this woman was already going after him, Jacob decided to remain hidden and bid his time. Another reason Jacob didn't use his hex was that the crimson shield gave him a strange feeling as if his hex would not work with that shield around, which was quite strange. So he continued to follow and ended up in the region of the mountain range covered with purple lightning. He had to admit that this place was extremely terrifying, but for Jacob, it was an unexpected opportunity. But first, he needed to take care of this group. Jacob watched the battle, which was swift and brutal. The woman emerged victorious by using vicious and decisive means, and he even approved of her undertaking. When everything was over, Jacob waited until the very last moment. Just as the woman claimed her prize, her triumph turned to horror as Jacob uttered, "Slumber Hex." Jacob stepped out of the shadows. His presence was revealed as the woman's body hit the bloody group. "You had been so close only to be undone at the last moment. What a tragedy." Jacob looked towards the woman, but his eyes were icy and emotionless. He had already seen everything she had done, but in the end, he was the one who was going to claim all the harvest, and he had no pity for her. The only reason he wasn't crushing her head under his foot was because he wanted her memories. "Autarch, take her memories, but be careful since she's the heir of a legendary king, there might be some security measure to ensure no one probes her memories," Jacob sternly ordered with a warning. He had already learned some common sense of legendary ranks from the barbarian memories. Searching for other memories directly from their souls is also a trait of legendary rank, and there were also many countermeasures against it, so the other wouldn't find the core secrets of an organization. Furthermore, Autarch almost died when he tried to take Sebastian's memories, so Jacob was now conscientious about this as well. Nonetheless, this woman was an heir of a legendary king, and her memories would be enough to enrich his knowledge about the legendary rank even more. While Autarch followed Jacob's order, Jacob waved his hand, and the legendary key with the crimson shield and golden staff, and everyone's space rings flew towards him. He was especially excited about the crimson shield and the golden staff, which the woman called the mystical golden staff. He had never expected to get two Fable legendary rank treasures. Furthermore, unlike those two, Jacob's soul force was on the same level as the Fable legendary state, and in his hand these two legendary treasures could showcase their true might. Chapter 798, Art of Nature. Lightning Meditation, Part 1. Jacob stood in front of the dry corpses of the woman's group and the heir of the Thunder Galaxy King. The woman had also turned into a wilted corpse devoid of any blood or vitality. As for where all the blood went, it was currently hovering above Jacob's palm, condensed into a dark crimson orb. Jacob couldn't help but sigh ruefully as he looked at the woman's corpse. She also had a mysterious sigil within her brain, so I didn't let Autarch take any risk. But one thing is now clear. The mysterious sigil that Autarch encountered in Sebastian's brain was the work of a legendary rank or even a mythical rank expert. Autarch told me that this sigil wasn't as powerful, and he might be able to devour it when he reached the legendary rank. But the sigil within Sebastian's brain was far more powerful and complex. I need more information about what these sigils actually are. For now, it would be safe to assume they are unique to legendary kings. Once Jacob discovered this fact, he instantly gave up on the woman's memories and directly absorbed her blood, killing her in the process. He glanced at the blood orb in his hand but didn't intend to devour it. Instead, he stowed it into his pendant as before since he didn't need any extra blood vitality at the moment. In fact, ever since Jacob discovered the abilities of his cursed blood, he had been storing the blood he encountered for emergencies. Now that he had taken care of these people from the middle galaxies, he looked towards the legendary key shimmering in black ethereal light. It looked just like the legendary key of Taurus before the tower changed it, with the only difference being the light and the pulsing symbol of Aquarius on it. Furthermore, Jacob noticed another difference. The symbol of Taurus, which should be gray on this key, was actually not present at all. Where did the symbol of Taurus go? Could it be related to the completion of the trial? Jacob guessed, since this was the only thing that made some sense in this scenario. Nonetheless, it didn't matter since he had already acquired another legendary key, but he had no intention of searching for the trial. Getting the other legendary key or disrupting others from obtaining the vestiges came first. Since he already had the legendary key, no one else could enter the trial without it. Furthermore, Jacob's main target was the cosmic vestige of Aries since, without it, he couldn't use the vestige of Taurus to raise his power. The vestige of Aquarius was second last in the universal cosmic sequence. But Jacob didn't leave. He looked toward the vast chamber's walls, which were lined with strange, glowing purple runes that pulsed with energy, giving off the aura of lightning outside the canyon. Then he looked at the center of the chamber, where a massive stone altar stood. Its surface was etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change under the flickering light, which also emitted an intense aura of lightning. Although he didn't know what this place was since it was hidden deep within the Lightning Mountain range, he knew there was some kind of secret there. Furthermore, this place was fraught with lightning, which had another meaning for Jacob. He might be able to complete the third meditation exercise of the Art of Nature, the Lightning Meditation, which required an environment filled with natural lightning. In the unique plains, Jacob had already planned to visit the Thunder Giant's territory, the Thunder Mountains, to see if he could complete the lightning meditation there before entering the Path of Legends. There were rumors that the Thunder Giant's territory was filled with natural thunder, but things went south, and he ended up in the Path of Legends before he could visit the Thunder Giants. However, when he saw this place, he instantly thought about the lightning meditation again, and he knew he had to take advantage of every opportunity to get stronger. The art of nature had never disappointed him. Furthermore, every time he made progress with a meditation exercise, not only did a new magic core form, but his other magic cores related to the art of nature increased in rank. If he could complete the lightning meditation, not only would he obtain a magic core of the lightning element, but if the rank of his magic cores increased, they could directly reach the Fable Legendary rank or at least the Quasi-Legend rank. Jacob walked towards the stone altar, directly opened the eyes of Judge at full capacity and began analyzing it. The more he observed, the more shocked he became because he saw extremely dense energy hidden under the stone altar, or the entire floor for that matter. Furthermore, at this moment, Jacob noticed that this energy was channeled through the runes on the wall. These runes were like a spiderweb, spreading throughout the entire canyon with purple energy pulsing through them, while the stone altar was the focal point of this dense energy. This energy has the same aura as the purple lightning on the surface and those beasts. Could this altar be the real reason behind all the lightning in this place? Jacob mused as his eyes flickered with a hint of surprise and delight. Jacob suddenly approached the altar's surface with his hand. The moment his bone finger touched it, a bolt of purple lightning suddenly discharged from it and latched onto it, trying to destroy it. However, Jacob felt a tiny sting like an ant's bite. His skeleton was extremely sturdy, and despite the destructive might of this lightning, it couldn't even graze his bone. However, the more important thing was that this altar was capable of discharging purple lightning, which excited Jacob as he quickly made his decision. Without hesitation, he jumped onto the altar and took a cross-legged position. The very next moment, a massive amount of purple lightning suddenly gushed out of the stone altar and covered his entire body, making him look like a lightning rod. Jacob only felt slight discomfort, as if countless ants were crawling all over his body trying to dig into his bones, but it wasn't enough to deter him. If it had been any quasi-legend rank expert, they would have turned into cinders under the assault of this lightning. Jacob quickly emptied his mind, recalling the third meditation exercise of the art of nature, the lightning meditation. His breathing patterns started to change into a certain rhythm and soon turned chaotic like lightning around him. He was one with the lightning. Chapter 799, Art of Nature, Lightning Meditation, Part 2. The lightning meditation is the third exercise in the ancient book of the Art of Nature. It is one of the most grueling and intense practices, testing the practitioner's physical and mental limits. Unlike the previous meditations, this exercise spans an entire week and must be completed in a single sitting, like the fire meditation, without any interruptions. The practitioner must remain focused and endure extreme conditions for 168 hours to complete it, 2 extra days from fire meditation. Moreover, to begin the lightning meditation, the practitioner must find an environment teeming with potent lightning energy, typically in the heart of a thunderstorm or an area known for constant lightning strikes. The atmosphere should be thick with electric charges, with lightning crackling incessantly, providing the raw energy necessary for the meditation. When Jacob saw the details of his exercise in his previous life, he naturally didn't believe it. It was utterly ridiculous, as no human could endure lighting for such a long time. Not to mention, to reach this point, one needed to complete the fire meditation fires, which was impossible on its own. Yet now that he was in the Zodiac Plains, this impossibility became reality. He had already completed 2 meditation exercises and was about to start the third one, which seemed like a fantasy before. As the lightning swirled around his entire body, Jacob's mind was calm as he focused on the breathing technique. The breathing technique for the lightning meditation was similar to the fire meditation but far more perilous. The practitioner must inhale the charged air, drawing in raw lightning energy. Each inhalation electrifies the body, causing excruciating pain as the lightning courses through the veins, threatening to tear the body apart from the inside. The first breath was the most crucial. The practitioner must inhale deeply, allowing the lightning energy to surge through the body, electrifying every cell. This initial shock is the most intense. After the initial shock, the practitioner must continue to breathe in the lightning-charged air. Each inhalation brings more lightning energy into the body, while each exhalation releases excess energy, preventing the body from overloading. The process must be continuous and rhythmic, with the practitioner maintaining a delicate balance between absorbing enough lightning energy to progress and not overloading the body. Yet Jacob was now a skeleton, so he wondered if the same rules applied to him, but soon he realized the difference. As he started the breathing exercise, his breathing shifted, becoming erratic and unpredictable, mimicking the chaotic nature of the surrounding lightning. Each breath was a strike of thunder, each exhale a crack of lightning. He aligned himself with the rhythm, letting the chaotic energy flow through him rather than resist it. As Jacob entered the meditation state and the lightning meditation started almost instantly, the gravitational force around him appeared and began to increase until it reached over 1000 G. Jacob had already guessed this from his early experience with the fire meditation. But for the current Jacob, this much G-force was nothing as he focused on breathing while enduring the pain of the lightning. As the lightning wreaked havoc within his body, Jacob suddenly felt his water core and fire core activate. Potent water and fire mana began to spread through his form, creating a strange harmony with the destructive lightning. The combined energy of the three elements weakened the force of the lightning, allowing him to endure it more easily. This phenomenon reminded Jacob of the fire meditation, in which the water core had similarly counterbalanced the fire's destructive power. These exercises had an order, a strict pattern that had to be followed to reach completion. Time lost all meaning. The days passed in a blur of purple lightning and crushing gravitational force. The entire stone chamber was now completely lit with pulsing purple runes, and the stone altar discharged massive amounts of lightning. The purple lightning outside the mountain began to vanish as it was drawn into the chamber, leaving the surrounding area eerily quiet. A corporeal violet bubble surrounded Jacob, filled with crackling lightning. The bubble was impenetrable. Anyone who dared approach would be crushed by the intense G-force or incinerated by the destructive lightning. As Jacob continued his meditation, an arcane aura began to emanate from him, spreading throughout the canyon and beyond. The lightning beasts outside were drawn to this aura, their instincts compelling them to charge toward its source, mad with the desire to reach it. But Jacob was oblivious to the chaos he was causing. His mind was merged with the lightning, his breathing steady as the energy continued to pour into him. Then, the nature of the lightning began to change. As it flowed through him, the dark runic lines of the longevity schema started to surface on his skeleton, pulsing with a crimson glow. The wild, chaotic energy began to converge, drawn towards a single point within Jacob's skull where his spiritual nebula resided. A singular violet point started to condense around his cursed heart, surrounded by the water and fire cores. It was like a tiny star revolving around the cursed heart, slowly growing in intensity. The singular point soon turned into a vortex of violet lightning, a swirling mass of raw, concentrated energy that pulled in every stray spark from the environment. After an indeterminate amount of time, the lightning energy began to condense into a small, dense core within the vortex. Initially, it was a chaotic swirl of lightning, but it gradually stabilized, the mana directing the energy into a cohesive, spherical form. The lightning magic core was forming. Just as with the fire and water cores, tiny white stars, rectified stars, began to appear within the lightning core. These stars signified the successful conversion of chaotic lightning energy into a structured, controllable form. The number of stars increased steadily as the core solidified, eventually reaching 100, the hallmark of a unique rank magic core. But the process was far from over. The moment the lightning core reached the unique rank, it released a powerful ripple that made the fire and water cores tremble. The next moment, more rectified stars appeared in all three magic cores: 199. 499, 999, the limit of the unique rank, but it didn't stop there. The three magic cores began to shake, the rectified stars within them shifting and gathering into the center of each core, forming a disc-like structure. This was the sign of a breakthrough, a transformation into a legendary rank magic core. Chapter 800, Lightning Meditation at Completion. The Zodiac Plains followed the star magic system, where magic cores were strengthened by magic orbits with the help of scriptures. However, in the legendary planes, among the legendary ranks, this process was known as the fire stage of the star magic system's evolution, called intramural planetary forging. Intramural planetary forging includes the ranking of magic cores divided by star rank, rare to extraordinary rank, epic star rank, epic rank, and unique star rank, unique rank, with each star rank containing 9 star tiers. This stage prepared the magic core for its next evolution, the world core seed stage, transforming the core into what was commonly known as the Fable legendary state magic core. At this stage, the magic core became a concentrated point of raw magical energy, similar to a seed. This seed contained elemental energies that had been condensed during the intramural planetary forging. However, it wasn't so simple. Reaching this stage required a spiritual nebula, as the magic core followed the path of planetary magic evolution. In contrast, the soul followed the path of soul cosmic evolution. Without soul cosmic evolution, no one could follow the path of the magic core's planetary magic evolution. Both the world core seed and the spiritual nebula fable legendary rank existed in their most elemental forms, and the first step was to stabilize them. One had to balance their mastery of elemental laws with the magic core, refining it through their soul force and spiritual nebula, much like controlling a nebula cloud. This is why the legendary rank was wholly different and referred to as demigods. At this moment, this exact process had begun within Jacob's spiritual nebula, not just for one magic core but for three. As the cores approached the threshold of the legendary rank, the surrounding environment reacted violently. The elemental energy within the cores became unstable, causing the entire chamber to tremble. Furthermore, the gravitational force around Jacob increased exponentially, reaching over 25,000 G, enough to pulverize the body of an ordinary quasi-legend or even a fable legendary rank practitioner. Suddenly, the sky above the canyon darkened, and mystical celestial phenomena, including neon shooting stars, became visible to nearly the entire path of legend. An ethereal neon energy gushed out from the space around Jacob, flowing directly into his spiritual nebula. This mystical stellar energy was a higher form of star energy, which transformed into either stellar aura energy or stellar spirit energy, depending on the path of the legendary rank. As massive amounts of stellar energy surged into his spiritual nebula and surrounded the three magic cores, the cores suddenly shattered into countless fragments. Jacob's entire body jerked as if a part of him had been struck with a hammer. However, it wasn't over yet. The fragments of the three magic cores compressed together, forming three ethereal, concentrated points of green, blue, and violet. A powerful suction appeared from the ethereal points, drawing in stellar energy like a waterfall. As the world core seeds of fire, water, and lightning solidified, a blurry astral hominid projection appeared behind Jacob, radiating the combined power of all three elements. This process continued for a while until the lightning meditation reached its completion. Outside phenomena gradually faded away, and all the stellar energy vanished from the chamber, revealing Jacob's sitting figure. At that moment, the intense gravitational pressure around Jacob disappeared, marking the end of the lightning meditation. His hollow sockets, once dark and abyss-like, ignited with ethereal golden-white flames. A powerful ripple suddenly erupted as Jacob opened his eyes. The altar beneath him shattered, the runes on the walls burst into blinding light, and the surrounding landscape shook. An eerie silence followed. There was no more sound of lightning or beasts. Jacob stood there, feeling the new power coursing through his skeleton. It wasn't just about forming three legendary magic cores. His eyes of judge seemed to have undergone another evolution and advanced. Lightning meditation. What a huge surprise. Not only did I gain a new magic core while the other two evolved into legendary magic cores, but my body has been strengthened by at least threefold. And that strange energy directly elevated my eyes of judge and soul force. Just what is the background of the art of nature, and how did it end up on my old planet? Jacob wondered, his eyes flickering as a peculiar conjecture surfaced in his mind, only to vanish quickly. Jacob tried observing his spiritual nebula and was pleasantly surprised to see that it had expanded slightly. The three magic cores were now completely ethereal, radiating the purest form of stellar energy. There was no aura or spirit left in them, startling Jacob. The fake aura and spirit glyphs he had formed using the scripture of blank were now gone. Raising his hand, an ethereal violet haze condensed in his palm. As it appeared, violet lightning crackled around it with pure destructive might. Suddenly, Jacob's eyes flashed with a strange thought, and he focused on the ethereal violet stellar energy. The next moment, it transformed into a calm, corporeal energy. Jacob's eyes gleamed with excitement as he focused again, and the calm energy shifted into chaotic flames. His mind raced as the violet stellar energy turned green, releasing intense heat. He repeated the process with the blue stellar energy, which was gentle yet profound. Once he confirmed his guess, Jacob clenched his fist, extinguishing the stellar energy. He was now filled with disbelief and ecstasy as he realized what had just happened. I can switch between aura and spirit for all three elements at will. Just what is this energy? Cursed immortality. Jacob didn't wait. He summoned the cursed book and asked for clarification. After laughing for a good white Immortica, he finally told him about the planetary magic evolution and how it was connected with the soul cosmic evolution. As for the new energy that you can change at will, it is called stellar energy, a higher form of mana exclusive to legendary rankers which contain elemental laws. It's 1,000 times more potent than the star energy that you're used to. Now, you can cast any spell below legendary rank without needing rectified stars as long as you understand their structures and even create your spells. Lastly, stellar energy can also help you comprehend elemental law. And since your stellar energy has turned into spirit or aura, the elemental law present in it is the purest. But then the thing is, Soul Nebula is related to me, so even if you comprehend the fire, water, or lightning law from it, it has no effect on your spiritual nebula at all, nor your magic cores are orthodox. What a dilemma, don't you think? Ha 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 ha, Chapter 801, Scales of Justice. Jacob's happiness instantly vanished the moment he heard the last part. He knew for a fact that Immortality wasn't lying, it never needed to. You know the origin of art of nature, right? Just what is it? I wasn't sure before, but now I think it's that, since only that can have such power. Don't try to deny it. I know better than anyone, Jacob said sternly, finally revealing his suspicions. Although Jacob didn't believe it at first, as time passed and he completed one meditation exercise after another from the art of nature, he began suspecting that it might be a universal godly scripture. After all, the biggest clue was that the art of nature followed the same magic system as the Zodiac Plains. And now, knowing how vast the Zodiac Plains were, an entire universe, he mused that his old planet might have been part of it too. After all, his planet didn't have the technology to observe the universe in its entirety. In comparison, his planet was just a speck of dust, and then there was his mysterious reincarnation into this world and his immediate meeting with Immortality. No matter how much Jacob wanted to deny it, he couldn't shake the feeling that some unseen hand was pulling the strings, and that left him feeling uneasy, as if he were merely dancing on someone's palm. Ho ho ho. You're letting your imagination run wild, aren't you? But sadly, I can't comment on anything. Everything will unravel when the right time comes. I'll give you a piece of advice. Focus on what you have instead of dwelling on unnecessary things. Sometimes ignorance is a blessing while wisdom becomes a shackle, Immortality said, profoundly yet subtly. Jacob frowned profoundly but didn't press the matter further. What Immortality said made sense, and for now he decided to let it rest, but that didn't mean he'd given up. Far from it. What about the eyes of Judge? He asked, shifting the topic. Now we're talking, Immortality cackled. Just as you felt, the eyes of Judge have evolved and entered the intermediate awakening stage. Your optical vision has become more powerful, and you can analyze anything within the legendary rank. Your judgment gaze can now see through the lies of legendary ranks. However, let me warn you. Using the eyes of Judge on someone above the fable legendary state will exhaust your soul force much quicker. Especially if you try to analyze or use judgment gaze on a legendary king, you might drain your entire soul force and even suffer backlash, for matters of the legendary kings are the matters of demigods. Even though your judgment gaze is passive, using it on those stronger than you require soul force. You've never experienced this in the lesser galaxies since you've already awakened your soul force, but the legendary rank is vastly different. Now on to the exciting part. When you reach the intermediate awakening stage, the eyes of Judge awaken an active ability known as Scales of Justice. The Scales of Justice is a domain-type law ability. Once activated, it summons a phantom of unique scales created from your soul force. Depending on the power of your soul force, the Scales of Justice will form a domain around you. Anyone within this area will be judged by the scales. With your current soul power, you should be able to create a domain with a radius of 10,000 miles if you use your full strength. However, I wouldn't recommend it, as it will consume a great deal of soul force. Additionally, the more people within your domain, the more soul force it will require. You must also be cautious. If someone powerful enters your domain, you'll be in trouble, for once a law ability is active, it can't be deactivated without completing its purpose. In the case of the Scales of Justice, judgment begins the moment a target is locked. If you fail to pass judgment, the law ability will deem you unworthy, and the backlash will depend on the target's power. On top of that, you'll lose this ability forever. That's why law abilities are rare and highly sought after, but they are also double-edged swords. You must learn to control the domain carefully and avoid becoming a victim of your own ability. The Scales of Justice can weigh the moral balance of a target's actions. It will judge their good and evil deeds over their lifetime, but only if you can maintain the ability long enough. If you fail, the backlash will hit you. Furthermore, the judgment rendered by the Scales of Justice is based on your moral beliefs and values. If you believe that killing is not evil but good, the scales will reflect that. If you think helping someone is evil, the scales will deem it evil. Remember, you are the judge, so you must be very careful. If the scales tip toward malice or evil, the target's power and vitality will be suppressed below your level. On the other hand, those with more virtuous deeds will receive a power boost, potentially surpassing you, and one of your powers/abilities will be suppressed at random. The length of the suppression depends on the target's strength. Even mythical ranks cannot escape it, such is the terror of law abilities. Although it might be a bit of a gamble, it's an entertaining one, ha 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 ha. Immortality burst into eerie laughter as Jacob's expression stiffened toward the end. It's better if I never use it. I'm not even sure what I consider evil or good anymore. I believe killing and inflicting harm is right and good for me, though I know it's wrong. I also believe helping others is good, but I'd never help anyone if it didn't benefit me. Who knows how the scales of justice will interpret these conflicting beliefs? Jacob thought. He weighed the pros and cons of the scales of justice and quickly concluded that it was too dangerous for someone with his twisted morals. Though he wasn't inherently evil, he wasn't inherently good either. He did everything for his own sake and had never gone out of his way to harm anyone. The concepts of good and evil had become distant to him. Still, the ability was undeniably powerful, and Jacob decided to experiment with weaker targets first. But he had no intention of using it here and now first. He needed to learn more about law abilities. Jacob's expression changed slightly as he looked toward the desolate canyon at that moment. The flames in his eye sockets flickered coldly. Ho ho, it seems you have quests. Chapter 802, Next Target. Jacob didn't reply to Immortality and directly unsummoned the cursed book before clothes appeared on his body. He then walked towards the entrance of the stone chamber, which was completely dormant without any trace of lightning. Only now did Jacob realize that he had absorbed almost all the lightning and even destroyed this place. He was shocked because he realized just how much lightning the lightning meditation required to reach completion. It seemed I must fully prepare for the fourth meditation exercise of Art of Nature, the Aurora Meditation. This exercise required me to meditate on something called Aurora Light. I have no idea where I would find this Aurora Light, but I'm sure it's not just simple light. I should investigate when I enter the middle galaxies. For now, I should greet these visitors. Jacob's eyes flashed coldly as he looked towards the dark canyon and coldly said, "How about you guys come out and state your purpose?" Oh, it seemed I was discovered. A ghastly voice suddenly sounded with a hint of surprise. The next moment, a 3-meter-tall crimson-cloaked figure appeared from the darkness, its face enshrouded by a crimson cape, but 2 crimson flames in its hollow sockets illumined its white skeleton face with 2 black horns on its forehead. He was holding a black bone staff and giving off a dark aura unique to a dark being. Jacob looked at the dark being, which seemed to be a high lick or a variant of a lick. He didn't bother to ask Immortality since he could sense this dark being's strength and was of no threat to him. Jacob didn't even bother to speak as his eyes flashed with killing intent. The next moment, a tiny violet sphere appeared right in front of High Lick's face. The High Lick was alarmed. He didn't sense when and how this violet sphere appeared a centimeter away from his face, but he felt alarm and a sense of dread from it. But before it could react, the violet sphere suddenly pulsed, and the next, boom! A small explosion filled with lightning sparks rang in the silent canyon, and the headless corpse of the dark being fell on the group. However, Jacob remained standing on his spot, coldly staring at the dark canyon and sneering, "It seemed you guys didn't have any manners." The next moment, violet lighting spheres appeared in 13 different places in the dark canyon and exploded. Many panicking voices rang in alarm, and a few silhouettes quickly tried to dodge, as they had already seen what had happened to the High Lick. However, despite their reaction speed, headless bodies dropped in different corners of the canyon, except one person who seemed to have escaped Jacob's aura lightning explosion, which was supported by Fable legendary rank Mana/Stellar Energy. Jacob also noticed it, and the next moment an invisible soul force spread from his body, locked on the escapee who was already 2 miles away, formed him and instantly pulverized his movement. The escapee struggled as magic power shimmered over his body, but Jacob's current soul force completely suppressed him and prevented him from casting spells. With a thought, Jacob's soul force pulled the captured target towards him, and like a fish trapped in a fishing net, that person dragged towards Jacob. Jacob finally saw a green-skinned elf in a sorry state. Her entire clothes were in tatters and blood stains were on her body. Jacob noticed a broken pendant around her neck with a lingering aura of magic. "Release me and I can let this matter drop," the elf threatened, but her voice was filled with dread and trepidation. She had never expected to encounter this Death Star in this place when she was here to find the treasure that activates that strange phenomenon. Although she was confident in handling any quasi-legend rank, she knew this person in front of her was somewhat different and extremely powerful. After all, he killed all those quasi-legend competitors with those strange aura blasts, not to mention that her protective treasure, which was a top-ranked quasi-legend protective treasure, was destroyed by that attack as well, without blocking the attack completely. Furthermore, she knew about soul force because she also had it, but this person's soul force was vast, like an ocean, which reminded her of the elders in her clan. Just the notion behind it made her shudder in fear. "Oh, despite staring at the death, you still have a mind to threaten me. Let me guess, you are from the middle galaxies, but I don't care, I can still let you go if you have information about legendary keys," Jacob impassively stated. He didn't kill her directly because she clearly had soul force and treasure that could block his casual attack, which was deadly to any quasi-legend. This made him think she was from the Middle Galaxies, so he might get some information from her like he did with the barbarian. Furthermore, he didn't let Autark take action right from the start since this was faster, and he could tell if she was lying or not with his eyes of judge. Sparing her was out of the question. He didn't want to waste much time since he had already spent a week here. The elf was shocked when she heard it, and a conflicted glint flashed past her eyes before they shone with determination. Kill me then. You will get nothing from me, I will never betray my clan, Jacob sighed before he shook his head. Well, since that's the case, you can die. But before that, do you have some seal or sigil planted in your mind? The elf's expression was confused. She clearly had no idea what Jacob was talking about, and this didn't escape Jacob's eyes. He pulled a toothy smile. It seemed only legendary kings had that strange sigil and only their heirs should have them. All right, I'll let you be my puppet. Without waiting for her response, Jacob directly sent Autark into her ear before knocking her down. After waiting for a few minutes, the elf opened her eyes, which were emotionless. Jacob looked at Autark with expectance, and as if sensing his thoughts, Autark emotionlessly said, Sir, this elf's group is from the Libra Middle Galaxies Alchemy Guild, and the person leading them is the youngest daughter of the guild president, a legendary king-state being. Her name is Samantha. 2 days ago, she received a message that Samantha had already acquired the legendary Key of Leo, found the Tower of Leo, and entered the trial. This woman was called back to protect Samantha like their other allies, and she was on her way when she discovered the phenomena of legendary treasure being born, which should have been caused by Sir. Jacob's expression changed as he quickly said, Lead me to that place. Tell me everything while we're heading there.